Welcome, everyone, to the Bennington Select Board meeting of February 24th. We are here in the Bennington Fire Facility, and we are happy to see you all here in the audience and those of you who are at home. My name is Jeannie Jenkins. I have the pleasure of chairing this board, and I'll ask my fellow board members to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Nancy White.
I'm Ed Woods.
I'm Tom Haley.
Good evening, Clark Adams.
Jean Connor.
Excellent. And also with us tonight, we have Stu Hurd, our town manager. We have Jonah Spivak. Yes? Yes. Who is making sure, who's our communication coordinator and is making sure that our presentations always go marvelously. We also have Nancy Lively, who takes excellent minutes, and Josh Boucher, who makes sure that we are live on CAT TV, for which we are very thankful. So let's begin, as we always do, with the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you lead us, Ed?
I will.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Oh, and Tom, would you share our vision statement, which guides our work?
I will.
Thank you.
Bennington is a welcoming, engaged, inclusive, resilient community where everyone, regardless of identity, shares in our vitality and benefits from an outstanding quality of life.
Thank you very much. All right, so next up is consent agenda. We have the minutes of February 10th, warrants, and licenses. For the purposes of discussion, could I have a motion to adopt these?
So move.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
All right, any discussion that hasn't already been had? The only thing, I think, remaining on page 4, the explanation of Class 1, 2, and 3 liquor licenses should actually, the correct information actually came from Tom. So if you could just change Jenkins to Haley, that would be great. Thank you. Anything else? Hearing none. Ready to vote? All those in...
Oh, just on the liquor license?
No, on everything.
Okay, on the warrants, I have a question.
Okay, good.
Page 1. I think it's 402269 to a construction company.
What page?
Page 1.
Okay.
Is your microphone on?
Now it is.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That helps.
Page 1, 402269.
Yes.
A construction company, $105,500, Ninja Path project. Where is that located?
That portion is, I believe, down by the river, where we're constructing a bridge across the Furnace Brook, I believe, that is part of a grant-funded program.
Is that the grant that you talked about last fall, about $2 million?
No, I believe these are monies that were already allocated for this particular project, which is why it's able to begin as early as it has.
So nothing's going to happen with that grant for right now?
Not right now, but I think probably come summer we'll be ready to operate with that new grant.
Well, the share to the voters, or to the local taxpayers, was around $400,000.
Nancy, if I could, Nancy, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I don't know what grant you're talking about. For clarity, if we could get it on the record.
Last fall, Stu announced that the town had been awarded a grant of nearly $2 million, and I think it was for the bridge and pathway down behind Hannaford. But the local share to the taxpayers is about $400,000. And I think Stu said at one point, the town doing it, you'd get it down to around $350,000.
You're throwing numbers out there. I know that we are looking to talk with the state agency about using force account work, which would mean we would do the work and be reimbursed by the grant funds. That has not been settled yet, and I know Dan is working with the agency on that. So I can't say for certain when we'll start and when we won't.
But my question is, without local voter approval, how could we commit that much money from town taxpayers?
We already voted on this as a select board.
But again, how do you commit that much?
So again, what we're doing is approving the minutes.
And for confirmation, Stu, this $105,000 payment is not related to that grant that
No, that's not.
Nancy
No,
has
it's not part of
questions
that
about?
grant.
All right, so this is a different question.
Okay, well, I
and so-
just want to make sure it gets addressed before we jump in.
Yeah, before we move forward with that, Nancy, we really have to be sure that we're going to be able to do this under a force account process, which would attempt to minimize any impact on the local taxpayer.
All right, any other questions on the warrants, minutes, or liquor licenses? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Are you voting? Yeah. How are you voting? Yeah. Okay, unanimous. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is public comment. Looks like we have 3 people wanting to speak. If there's anyone else after them that would like to speak, just raise your hand, okay? Debbie Matt, speaking on Senior Center. Oh, okay. So remember to give your name and town of residence. You have 3 minutes. Jean has the 30-second warning sign. And it looks like these are all not agenda items, but it should not be referring to anything that's on the agenda. And if there are questions, then after everyone has spoken, we will try and address the questions as best we can. Thank you.
Debbie Matt, Bennington. I want to discuss the February 10th takeover of the Bennington Senior Center. We are now under the Y and the Y's rules. They are having a meet and greet meeting Wednesday at 9:30. So I encourage anybody that has questions about it to please come and attend the meeting. I am hoping Stuart is going to be at the meeting to answer the unanswered questions that we have had. And I don't get the banner, but I don't believe that this has been published in the banner. And that's one of the problems I have with the banner, is I don't think they cover all issues that they should, which is probably nothing for this board to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Next up, Kelly Carroll, talking about the CPARB Public Forum.
Hi, thank you. Kelly Carroll, Bennington, Vermont. Bennington's Community Policing Advisory Review Board, CPARB, is holding their first public safety forum this Wednesday, February 26, 2025, at 6 p.m. in the 3rd floor multipurpose room in the Bennington Firehouse, located at 130 River Street in Bennington. The firehouse was a location change announced earlier this month, but the date and time remains the same. The meeting will also be broadcast live on Cat TV and live streamed on Cat TV's Facebook page and YouTube.com. Kate Cost, who's the vice chair, and I will moderate the forum. Our panelists for this forum are Bennington State's Attorney Erica Marthage, Vermont State Police Lieutenant Stephen Coote from the Shasbury Barracks, Bennington Police Chief Paul Doucette, United Counseling Service Psychiatrist Dr. Alia Reeve, Bennington Town Manager Stu Hurd. There will be a brief overview of CPARB, and after this, each panelist will briefly discuss their agency's role through an educational discussion on factors and prevention strategies impacting community violence, the decrease in local violent crime rates, why offenders of serious crime are often released without any jail or prison time, and citizen involvement, especially when it comes to vigilantism. After this, we'll have a Q&A session where we expect some additional topics will be brought up. And this forum came about from comments made during the November Select Board listening session. Our hope is that this is going to be the first in a series of CPARB's public safety educational forums, with the next one possibly focusing on the sentencing phase by inviting the judiciary, the Department of Corrections, probation and parole, the Defender General's Office, the Public Defender's Office, the Center for Restorative Justice, Turning Point, etc. No-cost childcare will be available for parents wishing to attend the forum on Wednesday, but to do so, you must reserve in advance by calling 802-500-2770. If you would like to make a comment or ask a question but are unable to attend the meeting, you may comment online on the CPARB town page on the town website. Thank you again, and we hope you will attend the forum and watch it on CAT TV on Wednesday, February 26th at 6 p.m. Thank you to CAT TV for covering that. And then also CPARB's regular meeting will be Thursday in this room here at the firehouse at 6 p.m. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Kelly. And then Jason Frederickson on Bennington Artisan Market.
Good evening. Jason Frederickson, Bennington, Vermont. Good evening, members of the Select Board and the supportive community we call home. We are now at a critical stage in making Bennington Artisan Market a reality. Since first introducing this idea, we've engaged with artists, business leaders, and the broader community to shape BAM into something truly impactful for Bennington, a working model for sustainability. Bennington Artisan Market is a hybrid retail workshop and community space, one that generates its own revenue while reinvesting in local artists and creative businesses. It will offer a truly unique retail experience that showcases the best of our region, making it a true destination for artists, residents, and visitors alike. Our model is built on 3 key pillars: retail, offering high-quality art supplies, regional artisan products, and Vermont-focused souvenirs. Custom framing, continuing Jay's Art Shop's expert framing services for artists and customers. Community programming, providing workshops, exhibitions, and business training to help creatives build sustainable careers. This is about more than keeping an art store downtown. It's about creating a thriving hub where artists, visitors, and the community connect. Financial transparency and longevity. As previously outlined, BAM is designed to be financially sustainable, ensuring that it reinvests in artists while remaining self-sufficient. We are leasing the space, not purchasing the building. Initial funding will secure inventory, fixtures, and startup costs. Long-term sustainability will be supported through retail sales and custom framing revenue, memberships and sponsorships, artist workshops and exhibition sales, future grants supporting education, and artist scholarships. This model ensures the Bennington Artisan Market thrives through community engagement, artist support, and sustainable business practices. A legacy continued. For 52 years, Jay and Joan Zwinenberg built something special, a place where artists found supplies, mentorship, and a creative community. Bennington Artisan Market honors that legacy, ensuring Bennington remains a place where artists don't just create, but thrive. Next steps, getting involved. Over the past few weeks, we've had meaningful discussions with local leaders, engaged artists, and begun planning a donor campaign to help ensure BAM's long-term sustainability. The response has been overwhelmingly positive, reinforcing that Bennington is ready for this next step. As we finalize details, we invite the community to be part of this effort. Your input, connections, and involvement will help shape the future of BAM and ensure it serves Bennington for years to come. Stay connected with Bennington Artisan Market by following us on Facebook, where we'll be sharing updates, fundraising details, and ways for the community to get involved. Thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to continuing this conversation and working together to make this vision a reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason. It's pretty exciting. Anyone else like to speak during public comment on a topic that's not on the agenda? No? Okay. All right. Then we'll move on. Thank you all. So next up, we'll have a presentation from the Executive Director of Habitat for Humanity, Cindy Luce.
Good evening. I'm Cindy Luce, and I am also a resident of North Bennington, so I am grateful to be able to speak here tonight, and thank you to the invitation from the Select Board. So we are, Habitat for Humanity is a 501(c) nonprofit. We're an affiliate of the international organization. So every affiliation is responsible for their own fundraising and for their own management, and we have the demographic area of servicing Bennington County. And there are 6 habitats within the state of Vermont, and so we all have a specific area. So we are Bennington County. We have built and sold 10 houses here in the town of Bennington, and we, over the last 27 years, so we've been in business 27 years, we have built throughout the county 30, we're finishing our 35th one, and we have absorbed West River Habitat, which is kind of like Wilmington, Wardsboro, so we service 5 houses there. So we actually are calling this house that we're selling our 40th house because we combined our efforts. So the house that we are selling soon is at 5 Greenview Drive, and it is a 4-bedroom house. It's for a family of 6, and the most exciting thing I do for my job is to see the kids coming home to their houses. We did an open house up there a couple of weeks ago, and it was so fun just to see the kids were there showing off their bedroom, and they're showing it off, running through the house, and really just enjoying it. So it was kind of fun just to see how they're going to really enjoy the house. So it was a lot of fun. And I encourage you, wherever, have another open house, which we will be having for 24, I encourage you all to join us. And we're also doing a dedication. Every time we sell a house, before we sell it, we dedicate it to our homeowners. And so we, because it's a partnership that we do, so we dedicate it, and that dedication for 5 Greenview is on March 15th at 1 o'clock, so it's a Saturday, 1 o'clock. Everybody's welcome to join us. Again, it's at 5 Greenview Drive, so which is just up in Jefferson Heights area. So on that street, we actually have 5 we're finishing, and 24 we've had an appraisal, so we're working on getting the pricing set and finalizing that, so that will sell to our homeowner in April. And we have framed in, I'm learning construction terms, so that's kind of a new thing for me, but we framed in our house on 26, which is also another 2-bedroom house. And then at the end of the drive, we're calling it 27, but we're not 100% sure if that's the right number or not, but we call it 27 right now. So at the end of the road, at the end of the cul-de-sac, we'll have another house built there, and that's going to be a 3-bedroom house. And then we have a lot up on Drive, which is the next street up, and that will be also another 3-bedroom house. And so when we get all of those houses done, we will have built 15 houses in the town of Bennington. And not counting the new houses, we've already added to the grand list about $1.1 million of property value to that grand list. So we're excited about what we do. Home ownership is about sustainability. It's about helping the communities, but it helps these families as well, and they become community members. And so that's what it's really about, is being part of that. And I encourage everybody to join us. We can always use volunteers. We're always looking for great volunteers. And so a little bit about how the program works, because there's a misconception. We do sell these houses. We do not give them away. Okay, so the partners are selected through a program where they have to qualify. They have to be within a certain income range. They have to have a certain level of debt to income, and they have to live within in the county, and they have to show a need for a housing, a change in their housing. And so once they've qualified, and the board has selected them, the Habitat board has selected them to be partners, they become partners, and we build this house together, and all the adults in the house have to put in 200 hours of volunteer hours. Some of it, at least 100 of it on the house, and 100 of it can be in the community elsewhere, or at our Restore, which is in Manchester, or they also do some education classes that we require that they do so that they're successful as homeowners. So they become, as I said, it's a partnership. They learn how the house is put together. They have that pride of, I put this door on, I built, put these studs up, and it's kind of fun to watch them, and especially if there's children who are 16 and 17, they too have to do 25 hours in the house, so that they have some ownership to it as well. So so that's how they're part of it is from the ground up. So just for a little bit of a reference of how many hours it takes to build a house, the 4-bedroom house that's on 5 Greenview, it's, as I said, it's for a family of 6, and it's taken about 2,800 hours to build that, volunteer hours. That does not count our subcontractors, so we do subcontract for, obviously, the landscaping, the foundation concrete work. We have to use licensed plumbers and licensed electricians, so we subcontract them. And I also instituted that we subcontract the roofing, because I don't like seeing my volunteers on the roof. So, so we do that as well. So those are the subcontractors, and those hours are not included in that 2,800. That's just the volunteer hours. So we're, really, that's how we keep these houses affordable, is because if you took 2,800 hours that took to build this house and had to pay the labor on that, you're out of the market for an affordable house, so that is how we keep it affordable. What's next beyond Greenview Drive and Crestwood is for Bennington area. We just acquired a piece of land on South Street, just before you get to the old Marty Moore's site. So there's about 6.7 acres there, but there's a lot of that's wetland as well on the backside. So unfortunately, not all that land will be developable, but we're looking to see what we can put there. We'll be kind of coming to a proposal for what we want to do and presenting that. But we're trying to figure out density is what we feel is needed. So whenever you can put more on a lot, the better. So, we're looking at maybe duplexes, or we're looking at smaller building lots, because we try to, get as much out of the land that we have, because there's definitely a need for housing, as we all know. Last year, we had over 100 applications go out. We had 25 of them come back, because it is a process. It's not a simple application. We encourage people to really, think about it. You can go on our website. You can see what's involved in the process, what all the documentation you need to be collecting. And so once you have, so out of those 25 people that returned them, we had 8 families that quote unquote qualified, because we were very careful. They have to have the ability to pay. They have to have, the debt to income, as I said, and things like that. So out of those 8, we used to only do 2 houses a year. But I encouraged and pushed a little bit, more than encouraged, but pushed my board to think, to stretch, and our volunteers to stretch. And so the whole organization kind of bought on that we were going to support 4 families. So typically we only do 2. We have done the 4. So all 3 out of the 4 are here in Bennington, and we will be doing 1 house up in Manchester in the Jennifer Lane neighborhood in the spring. We do have more land in Manchester, and we'll be building there, but because we won't be ready to build on the South Street property in 2026. But always looking for land, and always looking for support, because there are various towns that do appropriations for us, and we're hoping someday that Bennington will join us in that endeavor. We haven't yet come to that, but I will keep asking to be able to do a petition, but we will eventually be able to do that. So private donations and some state grants allow us to keep going. So that's where we are. We also do a couple of major fundraising events. One's coming up soon. It's actually on the 22nd of March at the Hildene Lincoln Hall, which they're sponsoring us this year. It's an amazing hall, so if anybody has not been there, I encourage you to join us on the 22nd to come see the hall and come see the kids. What this event is a model home competition, and it's for all students throughout Bennington County. So if you have a student, the winning person or team of up to 4 will have a grand prize of $1,000, and there is also other prizes, and you can find out more about that on our website. But it's a model home contest where you make a model home about 20 inches by 20. So, and we judge it. It's different age groups. It's a lot of fun. So it's our 5th year that we're doing it, but it's grown, and we've moved it to a Saturday, so it's more accessible to all the kids throughout the county. I have a lot of brochures back there on the table, so if you haven't had a chance to grab one of them. And I encourage you also to visit our Restore in Manchester, which is also another place where our funding comes from. That is a used furniture, art, house goods store, which all the pieces are donated from very generous people throughout the county, and all the proceeds go to our construction program. So I'm going to stop talking, but I know if anybody has questions, I'm here to answer.
Great. We'll start. Anyone on the select board have a question or comment? Yes, Jean.
So I'm the reason you're here. I've been wanting you to come for a while, so I'm really glad that you're here. The first question I have is, the reason I wanted Habitat to come is because I was aware that not many people knew how many houses you had built, especially in Bennington County, and I thought people need to know this. So I'm curious how you publicize what you're doing, how you spread the word about the events that the public are welcome to come to, because it would help get the word out. And maybe you do a whole lot and people just aren't paying attention, but I'm not aware of how you publicize.
So that's a great question. So we used to put it out in the Vermont News Guide, which has now gone to digital. So we're still putting things like little news press releases there. We do Facebook, and we do the Manchester Journal, and we try to get into the Bennington Banner. So, we invite them to all of our events, and Cat TV has come to some of our events, and GNAT does some advertising for us as well. We are always looking for suggestions, so if anybody has any suggestions, I'm open to hearing them, because...
I do.
Good.
Front Porch Forum.
Right, yep. We put them on the calendars, the various calendars that are out there. So,
yeah,
okay.
I consider myself pretty well informed, and I just don't hear.
I'll make sure.
So, and I do read Front Porch Forum and I think a lot of people do. The other, this is just a question, and it may not be the same for each project, but can you just give us a sense of how long it takes from choosing a family to them moving in? It's got to be a couple years at least.
No, we used to be able to do it in about a year. And that when we were doing 1 or 2 families, we would tell them we could do it in a year. Now that we've partnered with 4 families this build cycle, it's about 18 months that it's taking. We are very excited. We have a group coming in on the 7th of March. They're arriving, and they're going to be staying here for 7 weeks. It's the AmeriCorps members, so they're coming in, and there's a group of 12 of them, and so they're going to really kind of catapult us forward to finishing our house on 26. But weather is also an issue, so we're hoping to get another foundation in soon, and then they can be working on that as well. But it's typically about 18 months at this point.
Wow, that's faster than I thought it would be. That's
amazing.
So
we work really hard to, and we just hired a new construction supervisor, and so we used to only do volunteer work on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Now we have 2 paid construction staff, so we're going to be doing volunteer hours from Tuesday through Saturday. So it opens up even more opportunity for people to join us. So
and move along faster.
Yeah. Exactly.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
Can I ask, can you talk about the process? If someone wanted to volunteer, what kind of background do they need, and what's the process, and how do they see if it's something they want to do?
That's a great question. I didn't even touch on it. So on our website, we have a link that says sign up here to volunteer, and it brings you to a site that's called Volunteer Up. There's a waiver you have to read and sign, and then you just fill out the form and tell us what you're interested in. You do not have to have any skills to come to the site. We have a lot of volunteers who have a lot of construction experience, and they work with our volunteers that don't have experience. So we have people coming with no experience, and then they leave that they know how to install flooring or even, do the studs in the walls. We did have a women's build in August that we had 40 women come, and we actually happened to be right at the painting stage, which was perfect. Not that we say that's the only job women do. That's not what I'm saying, because we all do a lot of swinging of the hammers. But it was perfect because it was a big group, and it allowed us to paint the inside of both of the houses in one day with 40 people on premises. So volunteers do not need any level of skill. We train you. We work with you on the safety. We make sure everybody has the safety equipment they need. They have tools on site. And so you're welcome to come. The hours are usually 8:30 to 2:30 for the construction site, but if you only want to work a part of a day, or you want to just test it out, you're welcome. And also the Restore in Manchester also takes volunteers, and they're open Wednesday through Saturday. And so if you sign up on Volunteer Up, you can see the schedule. And if you want, and you're at a business, we also encourage small groups to come with us. So we've had banks come, and some of the other smaller institutions like Mac Molding actually was a larger institution that came for several Fridays. They brought different teams, and so we can do group days as well. So if anybody's interested, you can also email us at thevolunteer@BenningtonCountyHabitat.org, and Ty Paquette will reach back out to you.
Thank you. I do want to say, for window dressers, we had a large group from Shire's Young Professionals, and I was like, has anyone ever used a drill? And they all went, we worked with Habitat. We know how to do it. It was very impressive. Yep. They were great.
Yeah, they're due to come back soon. They do a good day every year.
Good.
Yep.
Anyone else from the board? Otherwise, any questions from the audience? Oh, yes, Jackie.
Not so much a question, but I was actually part of the Shire's Young Professionals group this past year that came and volunteered, and it was such a great day. I certainly have no experience, but I installed some things in a roof and then put a bunch of siding on a house, and especially as a new homeowner, it was really great to start developing some of those skills, and just a super fun day. So just to reiterate that, you need no experience, and it's a great time.
Thank you. It's really true, because we had a time when our board went and did the siding, and we all learned how to make sure that everything was plumb, So, yeah, a lot of fun. Any other questions?
If not, we thank you very, very much. And
Thank you.
You're going to leave material at the back so people can take it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. All right.
That's great. Thank you. All right. And now we are going to have our FY24 audit presentation. Yes?
Yes.
By RHR Smith and Company.
Ron Smith is here this evening, and I believe it's Samantha Ruggles is with him, and they will be doing the presentation for us.
Super.
Good evening. I'm Ron Smith, Samantha Ruggles. We hail from the town of St. Johnsbury, so we just traveled south and look forward to talking about and answering any questions you guys may have on the completion of the 6/30/24 audit, which I believe you have excerpt. Well, it looks like you actually got the full financial statements in front of you. What we did is not want to go over 100 pages. We pulled out the excerpts, of them that really tell the story there, and certainly able to go through that with this PowerPoint presentation and answer answer any and all questions you guys may have. So I'm going to start off with the first slide here, right there. And to first start off before this, we have two audits that we actually do. We do a financial statement audit for the town, which is basically encompasses your general fund budget for the services that you provide the community, and then all the other various, and you have a lot of other services that you provide with special projects, grants, and everything that comes through this town. And we give you two opinions. One is of the financial statements, and we gave you the highest opinion. It's called an unmodified opinion. If we found errors of disagreement, bad math, concerns throughout this audit, we'd have to note it in our opinion, and that's on pages 1 through 3 of that report. There are nothing in that. And I'm actually going to go through the audit, which is actually pulled out of that big monstrous document that you have right there in front of you. So you're looking at the balance sheet for the town, and remember, this is as of 6/30/24. And to simply say it, that the town had about $18 million worth of assets, against obligations and liabilities, of about $12 million, leaving you with equity, the second number up from the bottom in your general fund, of about $6.8 million. And of which your unassigned fund balance, is approximately $570,000, which is about a little south of $400,000 where it was last year. And sitting with this product and going over with Melissa and Stuart, for lack of a better word to say it, your financial portfolio, you have a lot of taxes invested into, hazardous and certain other properties that you have still on your grand list. And we decided, because you've been carrying those for a long time, it's probably best to tell a different story, to defer that. So you can see that your equity went down, but I'd like to give you the other news. Your deferred tax revenue went up by about $400,000. We're just deferring, that, because for the past lot of years, as these, properties that we have some contamination issues with on there, we're not going to see that money. You haven't seen it for a lot of times. So what we've done is we've deferred that, and certainly talked with Stuart and Melissa, and we feel that the history, certainly supported that deferral. So we've increased your deferred revenue until somehow those properties are put to better use, out there in the community, and put back onto your tax maps where the bills are actually collectible. But that caused your fund balance, your unassigned fund balance, to go down to about $600,000. Where do we like to see that number? 30, 60, 90 days of your operating budget. So putting it into Bennington terms, somewhere around, so at $17 million of approximate, general fund budget, about $1.4 million for 30 days, 2.8, $4.2 million. So you can see you're at probably about 10 to 15 days of your operating fund balance, because a lot of it's been deferred. It's based upon your property tax collection rate, and that's where we really felt that your fund balance was skewed, and we put that up in the deferred tax revenue, and that's certainly something, that I think that, hopefully the goal is to put those back on the tax maps and make them revenue-producing pieces of property. So that's the big change, in this. I've done this for 35 years. This is a difficult time and year for all of us in the world of government. I'll certainly start out by saying that, okay? And we do, in the state of Maine, we do 2/3 of all the municipalities in that state. Out of, I think, 160, 70 that actually get audits in the state of Vermont for municipalities, we do about 50 of those. And we do, I think, 90% of all the school systems in the state of Vermont as well, and the same with the state of Maine. So we know a lot about government. One thing that Bennington does that I think that there's been a lot of attention publicized, over the past 2 to 3 weeks, is that Bennington, within its general fund, has a lot of things going on. You're the recipient of grants state and federal. You're the recipient of many special projects that are funded with those state and federal grants. May I suggest, with the uncertainty that I think is, and I don't know how long it's going to take the dust settle. I really, truly don't, because there's federal programs that are winding down. There's uncertainty about the continuation of some of these federal programs that exist out there. May I suggest you take your special projects, which a lot of communities and schools are doing right now, and differentiate between what's funded locally at this town for the services and move those things that are funded from external resources, federal government, state government, put them in a separate column to give you a visual here. From general fund, between that and your community development fund, create a separate column for all your special projects fund, because it's right now commingled in your general fund. And I really think by doing that kind of gives you the flavor of what the uncertainty could be that exists out there, because I've done nothing for the past 3 weeks except answer, where's our planning grants going to come from? Where's this infrastructure money going to be coming from? We're glad that we obligated or spent our ARPA funds, which is another, story here in Bennington that you did for this past year. But those are separate inside about the local service that you provide here. And may I suggest you take all those special projects and services that you offer and exclusive from your general fund, separate them. So that way you can get a feel of what's coming in from this municipality and what's going out. Classic case in point, in your community development fund, you can see that, and last year in '24, you funded 3 local organizations, Bennington College, help me. Community Market, what's the other one, Squire?
Squire Recovery.
Yeah, so there's money that came in externally to leave your coffers to go to those places where it was needed based upon that service. That's what I would do. I would look at all those various things that you have there, those special projects. Can everybody see the $4.4 million and the $1.6 million that are sitting in your general fund? You got $1 million. It's literally the 4th and 5th number up from the bottom, okay? There's $1 million of there of appraisal fund. There's $2.5 million of special projects that I'm talking about in there. What I would think would be good for you, and I think a lot of municipalities it's come to that right now, again, to kind of separate the core services that you have for the external services coming in that's funded outside of your local property taxation. That 4.4 and that $1.6 million, maybe $1 million or $2 million of special projects, I would say, would stay in your general fund. Move the rest of it so that you can see, what's at stake here, because there's a lot running through that general fund, out there that really is additional services that you provide out there that you're dependent on these external influences to do. And there's where the publicity's been coming in over the last 3 weeks, the uncertainty, of those external. And I haven't seen anything like it in 35 years, in doing this. So we have some concerns. There's some questions that we can't answer, whether or not we're going to hear the word sequestration again that I haven't heard in a very long time, whether or not we're going to hear the word reappropriation, So I think it's going to be a waiting game for 60 days. And I would say for any community in the state of Vermont having a March town meeting, boy, I would like you guys to defer it until about May or June as the dust becomes a little clearer, because I think that that's going to impact a lot of the services that you provide locally here too. And there's a lot of communities that are concerned with the uncertainty of that, and that's certainly a message that I bring to Bennington here tonight, and a message I've really been, for lack of a better word, faced to deal with, over the past 3 to 4 weeks with the administration and what they're doing for funding, cutting off some of these agencies, how it's going to affect them going forward. A lot of uncertainty out there, and may I suggest put the uncertainty column off to the right. We know what they are. Move them off that, separate it from your core services. So. Community Development Fund, typically there's a number in brackets of $1 million. That's about $200,000 of where it's at, right now. Those are your loan portfolio. You restrict those loans. We put them aside and off the table. It would be nice to see some equity injected into that Community Development Fund. You had $1.7 million worth of grants that went to 3 core organizations here out there. You've got a loan portfolio of about $4.3 million. So a lot of that money's tied up and pulled pulled immediately off the table. You've been good neighbors to your community, and certainly I think that that's a fun, if that continues there. That's risk money. Somebody always told me, about since I first started this, usually those developmental loans coming in from HUD or EDA or some of these other agencies that participate in those loans is risk money, but it's real. You got a loan portfolio of $4.3 million. You're certainly heavily into the need of community development here in Bennington, so that's an important column, and that's probably one I would pay attention to as well. So you got some money in special projects and capital. If there's one thing, we kind of like to sit back and wait for the next 60 days. I always say the world of government is always underfunded in infrastructure needs, bridges, roads, everything else out there that you've got there. Mother Nature wreaked havoc on the great state of Vermont last year and our great state of Maine, like billions of dollars of havoc. And certainly I would say capital is probably another thing, that is something that could be very well needed and looked at almost monthly, it seems like, especially now with, this new administration. And really, we had that Build Back America package where the state of Maine got $2.5 billion. The state of Vermont got over $1 billion. We're not sure what's going to happen with that money now. A lot of it was going to come down through loans and, and things like that, grants to the political subdivisions. We're not sure, and a lot of people have frozen a lot of the capital projects and infrastructure needs. I don't know where Bennington's at this year with their capital, but there's a lot of people freezing capital budgets in the world of government right now because of this uncertainty as well. And the one thing that I would say for the town of Bennington, we have a slide here, towards the end of the document comparing to you other communities in the state of Vermont. We do 3 of the 5 communities on the comparison schedule. You don't have a fund balance policy. And that's probably one thing that I would definitely consider, as you go through these peaks and valleys, as you go through the uncertainty with the world of government out there, having a fund balance policy that says the town of Bennington will maintain 30% of its operating budget in reserve, not deferred, but reserve, cash on hand. 60 days is where we'd like to see you. That's not going to happen to Bennington overnight for sure. So it's something that we certainly would say that that's a goal to look for, and that's what we tell all of our communities. 60 days, and that's a benchmark out there that exists with the Governmental Accounting Standards Board and the GFOA in collaboration to put that out there. That benchmark is usually 60 days of your general fund operating budget. So we're short of that here. We do have a lot of money deferred. If we add that deferred, we're at about 30 days. We'd like to see it 60 days, so there's some work to be done, and may I suggest we're not going to do that overnight here in the town. So, Downtown Improvement Commission is a separate fund, again, separate from the core services that you provide, here at the town. Next slide, Smith. And here's your asset comparison. One's going to say, wow, our cash went from 11 million down to 5.4. The town diversified its investment portfolio and moved it from liquid cash and tied it up into some investment portfolio. So all it is a reclassification. So if you look on your financial statements, yes, your cash went down by $6 million, but it got reinvested into other investments out there. So basically it's a neutral adjustment. Just what we got to call it with our standards. What's cash? What's investment? Don't be alarmed, and that's the biggest thing that I see on that piece of paper right there. Next, Sam. Liabilities. I mean, you guys got a lot going on here. And notice the word general fund. Notice that term that we use, general fund, because that's the everyday operations of this town. But I think as we all know here in Bennington and many communities, you're not just a sole purpose providing public safety issues, general government, people having access to come in and conduct community service. You're a busy town. You got a water department here. You got a wastewater department here. You operate a lot of things outside of general government. So when I look at the general fund liabilities, because your cash is pooled, I look at that and say, I'm not sure that really tells a story, because that general fund liability all runs through your pooled cash for many of these funds here right now. And that's why I say if you can separate your portfolio out into the core town services and all the other special services, which you have many of here, including 2 utility departments that you run here, enterprise funds we call them. I think that would definitely make that schedule more More what? Appeal. She's saying appealing. I'm not sure that's my word, but my word would be more, more realistic when it comes to your core service programs. And that's what I'm trying to emphasize. The core services programs that you offer here and a lot of other stuff that you offer besides those core services. Next one, Sam. Your assigned, your committed fund balance, I talked about that. Surfacely, it went down by about $400,000, from FY23 to 24. That's nothing more than us looking at your portfolio, realizing that on your grand list, you had a lot of properties, about $700,000, that you're holding on to, a balance is due, where those taxes, you're not collecting because the hazardous waste is on there. You haven't foreclosed or acquired those properties because of the contamination and the liability that comes with it, but they're not generating cash flow for the town. So we thought it was good to isolate that. Talked with Stuart and Melissa about doing so, and certainly that's the reason why you're seeing the drop from your one fund balance to the other. So, next, Sam. And that's the unassigned fund balance. The 4.4, you were averaging, between special projects, reappraisal, things like that. I mean, you're averaging $4 million of special projects outside your general fund core services. So a lot of that money carries forward from year to year to be spent in conjunction with your plan to spend down these special projects. So here's kind of where your money came in, where your money left. You can see 17.1 came in, 17.5 left. You see where it says that number in brackets of $400,000. That's largely in part saying, we've had some properties on our grand list. We haven't collected them for a long time. Those are the properties, about $700,000. We redid the math, and we moved about $400,000 up under that deferred column. So we took money away only to defer it because those payments weren't coming into the town and have not been. So other than that, there's your financial position of $6.8 million, which I would say on this point, when you look at it, that miscellaneous revenue that you have of $950,000, that 1.9 of intergovernmental, those are a lot of the special projects attached to that coming in from the feds or through the state of Vermont directly that are coming into that. Put that money aside. Put that money aside and move it with your special projects as well. Move the revenues, move the expenses. I think it tells a little bit of a different story, but it isolates what your core services are and the other special projects that you have here. So again, there's the money coming in. There's the about $1.8 million that came into the town to come in to leave your coffers for 3, local organizations that were the recipients of a lot of that money, and that's nothing more than the activity, that ran through here. So what else is running through here? Not a lot. You got some loan interest. You got some miscellaneous revenues. You got about $40,000, there, but really that money is nothing more than the appealing of the word community development, and clearly you bought into this town $1.8 million from external influences to directly help the local community in development of some business opportunities for some of these, for the 3 that Sam had mentioned earlier. Next slide. We always like to show this one. I'd love to see, the big piece of pie, I call it, and always the big piece of pie. I wish I had a better answer for you, but taxes make up 80% of your revenue stream to come in and fund your core services. There's not a lot, of difference there, okay? One difference, you could say, what could you do about that? Well, I think that probably was something I could have answered about back before November, before this other administration, and really kind of what their future plan is with all of that and what they're going to do. But there's a lot of programs that are available, and I'll just mention one in the state of Vermont and one in the state of Maine. Well, actually 2 in the state of Maine, some in the state of Vermont, and that's TIFs. and that's wind power, and other economic development, stimuluses out there to try to include your community development growth, so you can build, not only put the tax burden on residents, but to put the tax burden on the commercial growth in your town. And in Maine, if you were in the town of Oakfield, you wouldn't see a big piece of pie green there. They have wind power up there that pays 90% of their operating budget up there. Those are the exceptions out there. So for me to offer you something that says, go bring wind to this town, go bring solar to this town, which I think is a popular thing up north in northern part of Vermont, it doesn't work that way with all the other communities, and some of these communities with TIF and some of the luxuries that they have, and some of this development, certainly Bennington doesn't have that same luxury, and a lot of your core services are paid through taxation. So, and that's common in the world of municipal and political and local government. Next, Sam. And here's where your money's going. Public safety is certainly, a big one. As I would expect, public safety and highway are usually the biggest pieces of the pie, and Bennington is no exception to that. Yep. So here's a comparison that we like to put into a slide, what you look like compared to some of these other communities. We do 3 of those 5 communities. And you can see one of the things that I talked about up there. There are a couple of communities up there that do not have a fund balance policy. Typically, it's 30 days or 60 days. Bennington doesn't have that one. And it's nice to, I think, look in the mirror. You've got a lot of special needs out there, but I think when you pull that out from the core services, it's always nice, like some of these municipalities have, to put 30 or 60 days of your operating budget in a reserve, out there to give you flexibility. So when the phone rings and says, hey, you're not going to get your check for project X, Y, or Z, you've got your fund balance reserves out there to do that. And typically, we out there see the world of 30, 60, 90 days as a benchmark. 2 of the 5 communities on this slide in the state of Vermont are 30 and 60 days. So actually, 2 of them are 30 days, 1 of them 60, Montpelier. And here is really kind of a lot of people like to, do we have too much debt? You don't. And that's actually based upon a calculation with your grand list. Bennington doesn't have too much debt, but a lot of people like to say that. What's the impact to an individual paying properties taxes in Bennington? And you can kind of see, where you relate out there. You're actually at one of the bottoms of the list in 5 of those comparisons of those communities. So what's that mean? You haven't been using debt to leverage your operations in these core services. Say a lot of these have, and I always say you want to be careful, because what's going on in Montpelier, what's going on in South Burlington, they are spending millions of dollars of infrastructure upgrades, down there. Montpelier lost its Main Street. So there's the reason why, that they're going out there, because they had a calculated plan to put our city back together. We've got some projects, some deferred maintenance that's been done, and they've used debt as a vehicle to do that. But seeing where you stack up against some of them, you're at the bottom of the list. So. And that's all I got for you. So I am Sam and she's really the brains of the outfit, but she's a coward and doesn't want to stand up in front of this microphone. So she said she's going to point the clicker. I'm here to answer any questions you guys all have. So.
Thank you very much. Anyone from the board have a question? Yes, Clark.
Thank you for that information. Thank you for that information. I guess what I'd like to, or if you could tell our citizens a simple statement. We're doing good monetarily, right?
You could be doing better.
Could be, well,
you can be doing better. And when I say you could be doing better, I'd argue when you take your portfolio outside your core budget of $17 million, you're a busy place. You are a real busy place. And I think that, to say that you've been frugal with your money, trying to really watch your pennies, concentrate on core services to help subsidize, concentrate on special projects to subsidize your core services, I think that probably we'd like to see you at 60 days, with a lot of your neighboring communities up there as well, and to do that, you aren't getting there for 2 or 3 years, not with this volatility of what we don't know is going to happen with our economy, how that's going to impact local government. But where we'd really like to say is, yes, I think you're doing good with your finances. You've been very conservative here, as I would expect in Bennington, okay? But we got some work to do to kind of put you up, with, a place that we would like to see you that's very consistent with industry standards. And there's some work that needs to be done, so, yeah.
Okay, yeah, my goal is want folks out there to know that we're doing good. We're not
doing good. And you got a good finance department. Like I say, it was a pleasure to work with her, and as she delivered us information, we were really able this year, which I think is the second year of our engagement, we were able to sit and concentrate on some of the math here and just really, okay, what would we do as the outsiders looking in if we were you? And we had a lot of those conversations this year. So, and we know that she gets it, Melissa gets it, and follows along, and we thank her for her cooperation through this process, and Stuart.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Super. Nancy, any questions?
Yeah. You brought up the TIF. For probably 7 or 8 years, our taxpayers did pay town officials and others to work on a TIF district for downtown Bennington. There were specific properties that were going to be designated as TIF projects, such as the Ben High. Unfortunately, I think it was in 2023, our town walked away from the TIF. So lots of questions and concerns about how that's going to impact Bennington and projects going forwards.
Yeah, and I think TIFs are a direct, influence on community development, diversifying your tax base from residential to commercial, and I think some of the properties, that we had talked about there, for lack of a better word, on your tax rolls, but not where those tax bills are regenerated. Certainly, there's a lot of conversation. Walking away didn't help you because Vermont has a very short line, of communities that have TIFs. So I don't know really enough about to where you were in the process, what that conversation, would look like to regenerate, and get back to where you were as you walked away. I'm just not smart enough to sit here and offer an answer to your question, but I can tell you, you're in a long line of people trying to diversify their communities right now, and I'm not sure where TIFs are going to stand, with this new administration, even though it's a state thing. Well, let's face it, the federal government is certainly, influential, about what state has for community development programs. $1.7 million came through the state of Vermont and HUD, so you can directly put it into your community. So being able to have that conduit here that you all sounds like you walked away from a few years ago, probably time to have that conversation. I'm more than happy to talk to Melissa and Stuart that kind of where you were and, why that happened, but I'm just not smart enough to do that. But I can tell you, they are a good vehicle if used in a constructive way. And with planning and foresight, they can really help you diversify your tax base. And I think that that's something that Bennington needs.
Sarah, any questions? Okay. No, okay. Anyone in the audience? Questions? Yes, Ken. Yes, please, go to the microphone.
Good evening. Ken Millman, resident of Bennington, Vermont. I'm a little confused on the audit. The audit was as of January 30th last year?
June 30th.
June 30th? So why are we talking about the future? How were we on June 30th?
So this is as of June 30th, the presentation, so we're all clear of what I just went through. Yeah. The future is you're 9 months into a town meeting that you're about to have in a few weeks, I'll assume, here in the town. And what I also know is a lot of government in the future is looking at the budgets that they are proposing to bring to the public, saying there's a lot of uncertainty trickling down to our state from the federal government. That's why I caution the town of Bennington and all the other 400 municipalities that I deal business with, be careful with this next budget, because I think the future is going to have a great impact on who you are and what you look like. So, and I think that will be determined over the next 60 days. That's me, just giving you advice. I'm doing this for 35 years. So.
All right, but again, the audit was
6/30/24.
And at that point, the numbers, everything in the books were accurate? You didn't find anything wrong?
Correct. Yeah, correct.
And the future is, who knows?
The future is, you'll know who knows. Sadly, I think it's going to be after town meeting.
But we did a budget as a town in January. So what do we do?
There's nothing you can do.
You're just having an opinion.
There's nothing. No, my opinion is, in doing this for 35 years, I'd wait for the dust to settle in the next 60 days. And if you've got some major capital projects, may I suggest you sit tight, on that, because I'm not sure I can give you an answer on how it is that I would best be in your chair to pay for those capital projects. That's the big thing. And the special projects.
When I go to vote next month, so I did not vote for the budget?
No, I think you're going to vote for the budget that made perfect sense for you guys all putting together. And I think, sadly, you've got to trust your people that you've put into power up here to manage that budget with information that we don't know. We don't know the uncertainty coming out on how it's going to impact these budgets that you're about to pass. But that's a prudent budget that was put together, okay? But as far as how it was put together, the times changed literally probably at the time you were putting that budget together or not long after. And that's all I'm saying. Put that budget together. But if something comes up within that budget that says we might want to wait, for whatever, the good news is the budget you're putting together starts on July 1st, 2025, and I think it becomes clearer for you and a lot of the world of government to know what you're about to pass in June happens in July 1, after July 1, and I think that that's an advantage that you all have, is that this isn't going to happen after March 1st. This is going to happen on July 1, the budget for next year.
But we're going to vote on March 5th.
Yeah, but that budget was put together on what you knew. Sadly, there's a lot of things we don't know now.
If I could answer some of that, Ken, this budget doesn't contain any major capital projects that rely on federal funding at the present time. We're mostly relying on standardized state grants that will come to us and other funds that we have available, as well as taxpayer funds. So we're not looking out for the next fiscal year and attempting to use high amounts of federal dollars. So I think we're relatively conservative in our approach.
And sadly, some communities put budgets together based on those dollars that they were promised or certainly set aside, and now they're looking at their plan to say, we're going to sit, that's one area we're going to sit tight in until they have better information. Doesn't sound like Bennington's in that situation.
No, it doesn't. And Ken, I appreciate the question, because I think, Clark started us off with, we are very frugal in Bennington. We are very careful. I think your comment of we should look at sort of what is the iffy money given the federal government situation, and separate out that from
your core services.
From core services makes sense, but I think we also know that in order to grow, we also want these special projects, right? But I think the point is that the budget is a sound budget. If things change, no one expected Irene to hit. When something hits, then you make adjustments. And I think the point of the audit is to make sure that we are fiscally sound and that we are following appropriate procedures, and to get good advice about going forward, what we might change to make it even clearer. But there was nothing. But as far as I'm understanding, there's nothing in this audit that says that we are in trouble.
Completely correct. Nothing.
Thank you.
And nor did I try to offer that, out there. You are fiscally sound, with the exception of we don't know what the uncertainty is. Could we put ourselves and work to ourselves and put us in a better situation? Yes. What's that look like? What's the uncertainty look like? You brought up a great example. I'm from the Northeast Kingdom. Sam's from the Northeast Kingdom. They're still putting it back together, and they've put probably $50 million in doing so. We're seeing very little money from reimbursement. Where'd they get that money to put their communities back together? So those are what I'm saying here right now. And we've got a lot of non-core service special projects that you guys are putting into your community. Great. As far as that goes, that's probably pretty certain here, where those are, because that money you already in possession of. It's anything out there that could be compromised with what we're all hearing and seeing and reading about. That's what you really want to pay attention to. And I know that we have a lot of schools and other municipalities that are depending on that core federal budget. They're concerned. So Bennington Bennington is not in that same boat.
Great. Other questions? Nancy?
But you did say if there's major projects going on that they should be receiving federal money, we should hold off for 2 months?
So I know other communities are, based upon what we're hearing from our Maine Municipal Bond Bank. I haven't talked to the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank. I'm sure that they're in the same position of our Municipal Bond Bank in the state of Maine because of where that money comes from. Clean water, drinking funds, certainly things like that. There's a lot of projects right now that a lot of people are sitting tight for the next 30 to 60, 90 days, just on these projects, whether or not there's any type of, for lack of a better word, reallocation of those funds that have been promised to some of these communities. We hope not. I haven't seen it in 35 years, but I've also never seen what's happened, to this world in the last 35 days with these budgets either.
And I'm just thinking we may have that kind of discussion when we talk about the sand filter at the next meeting, right?
Yes. When we talk about a major capital expenditure like that, we're looking out to March of 2026.
Yeah. Yes, Dan?
I just want to, I know this has been said, but I want to be extra clear. Our budget does not depend on any federal funds.
Yeah.
None of the projects that we have planned are dependent upon federal funds. So our budget is separate and distinct from this, I agree, very problematic issue, but this has to do with future projects and future budgets, not this current budget. So just to make everybody feel comfortable, no project is dependent upon a federal grant that we don't already have in place.
By this budget, do you mean that ends in June or
No,
that
the one that
starts
is
in
being
July?
voted on.
The one we're voting on.
The one you're voting
on March 4th.
So
But
just
how
to
do
be
we-
extra clear.
But how do we know that federal money that's supposed to come to the state will actually come to us for a couple of months? How will we
We
know?
don't know, but our budget's not dependent upon that.
And what I'm saying to complement that point is, but you've got some of those federal funds and state funds that combined with your core, pull them out. Pull them out so you can see what you are dependent on. And that's local taxation that makes up 80% of the revenue base to come in and pay for your core services. Pull the other stuff out of it.
Yeah,
That's all
I
I'm
think,
saying.
I don't want to confuse, I think there is some confusion in just the sort of the way this is being talked about. One thing is the audit, and the next is you are suggesting that in the future, a change that we might make is separating things out so that if the current administration closes everything down and no federal money comes next
You
year,
can see your
we
core
will
service.
know it.
Exactly.
But that has nothing to do with
your budget.
this budget
Yeah.
or with or the audit.
So I thought I never said that. That's what I'm trying to say. If that impression was given by me, that was not the impression. The impression is there's a lot of communities not named Bennington that are very concerned about some of their additional services that they provide on top of their core services, and really how the road money that gets to you, if that's going to be impacted down the road. So that's my whole point, is to do that and, to understand. But how about we're able to separate what our core services are from everything else that we offer to Bennington, because you do a lot.
Great.
If I can just reiterate, for 2020, fiscal 26, we built the budget based on revenues that we knew of and have in our possession or know where they're coming from. They're not federal, and there's no at-risk projects. Therefore, we don't need to pause anything for fiscal 26. This is very good advice. I, as a board member, would like to see it separated out. I think that's just responsible budgeting, and I appreciate that suggestion. Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, Nancy.
Last question. When you're talking, I think you said the non-governmental money that's going through the town office to groups that provide services?
Well, you have community development loans out there to
I think one concern people have is watching the money to go to those projects, and yet we can't get money to help us fund our water and sewer system where we have to keep going out to bond. So how do you balance that?
That's a local choice, and I wish I could give you a magical answer on that. Which community I'm in, Bennington? If you guys want my advice, and that's why I say don't compare yourself to other communities, because the advice I'd give you here would be different than the advice I gave South Burlington and Montpelier 3 and 5 years ago as they're building the infrastructure in their community.
But my concern is we can't get that money for the water and sewer, but the money can go to these other extra projects, so.
That's the way those programs were developed, for those programs. That's the best way I can say it. And if Bennington thought that, that was something that they need for those programs, that's a choice you made locally, but there's other choices, out there, and I'll assume whether or not it's those businesses or the TIF fund that it sounds like was a discussion that got taken off the table. You've made some choices here in Bennington. I'm just not smart enough to know what some of those past choices are, but certainly whatever I can do to offer any guidance, in me being me for 35 years and seeing what I thought, and I never say this anymore, is like, you think you've seen it all? Nope. So whatever I can offer, for that as it applies to where we're sitting here in Bennington, more than happy to help Stuart, Melissa, and you guys, with any guidance that I can give. But I might not give Montpelier that same advice. I might not give South Burlington. Where am I? Okay, where am I? They've got, some distinct advantages over Bennington. It's just a fact, So whatever that is, make it Bennington sensible. Make it Bennington sensible, so.
With that, well, thank you very, very much. This is a very,
if there's
very helpful
any follow-up questions, please reach out. But before I walk out of here, no way do I want anybody to understand that this is a balance that I wouldn't endorse, et cetera. I'm just pointing out facts to separate core services, which I think your budget does, that's different than the way other people budget for in other municipalities, is my only point. And I don't think that really affects how you move forward. And I just want the public to know that, too, to leave no doubt. So
great. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for coming down here and doing this in person.
Thank you.
That's always great. All right. Now we are moving on to Policy Palooza. We've got a lot of policies coming up. All right. So let's start with the ethics policy, the Municipal Code of Ethics, which we've been trying to get to for several meetings now. Dan, please lead us through it.
All right, so I'll just do a quick recap of kind of what's happened recently and why we're reviewing this policy. The state of Vermont recently adopted a statewide Vermont Municipal Code of Ethics in January of 2025. It became effective. That law applies to municipal officials as defined in the statute, and that includes select board members, development review board members, and essentially department heads, town manager, et cetera. So employees and appointed officials, but only senior employees for the most part. And there's a very specific definition in the statute that spells out who this new law is applicable to. So this policy that we'll be looking at is applicable to municipal officials, not to other employees or other officials. That statute requires the municipality to adopt an investigation and enforcement of alleged violations of the Municipal Code of Ethics, and that is what is before us this evening. That was developed back in December of 2024 and adopted on an interim basis by the town manager to meet that deadline of January 1 of 2025 to have a policy in place. That policy is now before the select board for your review and approval on a permanent basis. This policy was approved by not only town council, it was also approved by the Vermont State Ethics Commission staff. It was actually the first one that they reviewed and approved, and they were very happy with it and said that they would provide it to other communities for their review. So we're happy to help other folks out. But actually I have to give Jonah a lot of credit. He worked with the State Ethics Commission to get that approved. I'll just go quickly through what does this policy do. It essentially creates a procedure by which folks who believe an ethics violation has occurred to make those allegations, and then how those allegations are investigated, reported, and then records kept per statute of those allegations, investigations, and resolutions. So just a quick overview of how that works. What we did is we divided, there's essentially two processes, one for employees or municipal officials who are employees and municipal officials who are either elected or appointed. So we have an ethics violation complaint form online that folks can fill out, or if they wish to call in, we will take the information and fill it out to the best of our knowledge for those folks. So it's not just online, but it can be called in. You can also come in and fill it out, come into the town office, fill it out, fill out a paper form, et cetera. So that's how that all starts, with filling out the form. We have to identify one person to receive all of these complaints, and that person is the HR director, and they're identified in the policy. That person is identified in the policy. All those complaints would come to the HR director. If that complaint is against the town manager, it would be the chair of the select board would be notified immediately of that complaint. So the HR director then reviews all complaints against employees and decides what, if any, investigation is necessary. The select board chair will review any complaints against elected or appointed officials and make the decision regarding what, if any, investigation would need to occur. Again, the Human Resources Director oversees the investigations regarding employees. Once the investigation is completed, a report is issued, and the results and the decision is made, and the results of that investigation are sent to the person who makes the complaint, as well as the person to whom the complaint was made about. The select board chair essentially follows that same process for elected and appointed officials. Does an investigation if necessary, report, and then the decision is then sent to the parties involved, the complainant as well as the person that the complaint was made about. Then it is with regard to employees, the town manager would make a decision regarding what, if any, discipline or other type of measures need to be taken to address that complaint if there is found to be an issue. Any illegal activity would be reported to the appropriate authorities, whether it be to the police department or to the state's attorney, et cetera. This same process is done, it's a little bit different because obviously the town manager can fire and discipline folks. It's a little bit different when you're talking about an elected and appointed official. And so the select board makes the decision regarding what discipline, if any, is appropriate. With regard to appointed officials, those appointed officials can be removed for cause if there is found to be an issue. And elected officials, it's a little trickier. As you know, state law does not allow for the removal of elected officials, but there are other ways to deal with issues like censure, et cetera. And that would be up to the select board as to what that process would be if there is an egregious violation. Obviously, same with employees. If there's any illegal activity, that would be reported to the appropriate authorities, state's attorney, et cetera. So that's just a quick rundown. It's really just a elicitation of the process by which these complaints are received, reviewed, how information is then disseminated to those folks that make the complaint and those folks to which the complaint is made. And then there's very strict statutory requirements regarding how all of those records are maintained. And the HR director is responsible for doing that. All those records are, by statute, strictly confidential, except for the result of the investigation. So I'm here to answer any questions you might have. It's a fairly straightforward policy that has been reviewed by council and approved by the State Ethics Commission, but happy to hear any comments or concerns you may have.
Great. Anyone on the select board? Yes, Clark. Angie? Okay. Jean, Clark, then Nancy.
I just have a comment, and I know what I'm about to say will probably not go anywhere, but when has that stopped me from expressing my opinion? I'm not going to start now. I found it frustrating as I was reading this that it took 4 pages to arrive at the definition of what an ethics violation, prohibited conduct was. As I was reading it, I'm like, I want to know what that is as I was reading through it for my own understanding of I'm not making sense.
So we don't define that in the policy. It's
No, I'm not
defined by
saying,
statute.
I'm just saying where it's placed in the policy. It would
We don't
be-
have it in the policy. What you may be looking at is the statute.
Oh, it's the statute.
It is the statute.
Never mind.
On which this policy is based.
Yeah.
So we don't reiterate the statute.
We can't
in
fix
the
that.
policy.
Okay,
Right.
see, here I go again. I still express my opinion. I found it very frustrating to understand the statute, having to wait so long into it to understand what a
That's state
violation
statute.
was.
We don't have any control over that.
Yeah, thank you. I still had to say it.
Clark.
So I understand you mentioned confidentiality of the complaint and so forth, and the only thing that's open for public release is the conclusion. So my question, again, maybe a little obtuse, the actual fact the complaint was made, is that public? You know, you can't ask for results of something you didn't know was happening.
So the answer is complaints are confidential. That's by state statute.
Okay, that's what I thought, but again, I'm thinking, everybody in this room asked for something they don't know occurred. I'd like to know the results of something that I really don't know happened.
Well, so someone makes a complaint. Let's say it's somebody thinks that someone had a conflict of interest because they had information that was inaccurate. Let's just say. The investigation is done. It's found to be that there is no conflict of interest, and that conclusion is public, but not the substance of the complaint. The conclusion is that there was no violation of the ethics law.
I understand what you're saying. So, well, again, in my mind is we're giving your conclusion to something that you're not aware was even alleged.
That's correct, and that's by state statute. We don't set that up.
No, I'm
Yeah,
kind of in the same boat with
Yep.
Dean here. It's just one of those, every now and then I find myself thinking past the obvious.
So I think I'm going to follow up to what they both have said, and this is just me repeating what I think I understand. The details of a complaint can't be public, but the resolution of such would be. Can you give us, and you have to think creatively here, but can you give us an example of a complaint that was found to be with merit?
Let's say that you voted on a contract that your brother's company benefited from.
Yep.
That complaint would be obvious conflict of interest.
So my fellow co-board member sees me vote on something that he believes is a conflict of interest. The complaint is filed, it's investigated, the outcome is correct, that it was a conflict of interest, and it was inappropriate that I voted. The outcome is whatever the outcome is. The outcome is known, but the details of the complaint are not.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay.
Yep. Now, however, the person that the complaint is made against has the authority to release. Let's say you were accused of something and you want to clear your name. Sure. You can say, I want that full report made public.
Yep. Yep.
And I would think most people would want that to happen,
Sure.
especially if it was found that was not an issue. So.
Thank you.
So there also are complaints that may not be. So let's say that you make a complaint about a DPW water employee. That's not a municipal official. So the complaint would be the response would be, you've made a complaint that is not subject to the state code of ethics, so we're not going to investigate that. Now, it may be a complaint that the town manager and the HR person investigates under our own conflict of interest policy or our own code of conduct, but that wouldn't be under the state process.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Are you following up?
Right, yeah.
Okay.
Again, I'm still trying to get past the idea that the fact the complaint was filed is not something the public would know. So again, back to the idea, I don't know what happened, so how can I ask about the results?
So they will know that it was filed because there'll be a finding that said if there was no finding of conflict.
You just won't know
You just
until
won't know
after
what, you
the
won't know
investigation.
who it was made about or what the specifics were.
And we'll know about every complaint that's filed because
Yes.
every complaint has to be resolved.
Yes, well, there has to be, there'll be several different, there'll be, that it's not under the jurisdiction of the statute, the facts don't support a finding of a conflict of interest, or the facts support a conflict of finding.
And those are all resolution.
Yep.
Yep, in my mind, yeah. So we'll know about them, we just won't know until...
it's resolved.
The process is complete and resolved in some fashion.
Yep. Now, the person who makes the complaint is going to know that we've received a complaint about an individual, because we're going to say, we've received your complaint, we will investigate and respond with the results once the investigation is complete.
Okay. Nancy?
Dan, what did the legislature decide last year? Are they still going to create a regional board to handle complaints, or did they decide not to?
So the answer is there is no state body that reviews complaints against municipal officials. The only thing we have, the best we have, is we can make inquiries to the State Ethics Commission to say, hey, here's a certain set of facts. Is this a conflict of interest, and can you advise us as to whether or not that's a conflict of interest? But they will not take a complaint, investigate it, and tell us, yes, that person or this person did or did not violate the conflict of interest policy.
But they'd been discussing at one point last year creating a regional board to handle all the local complaints. Did they do away with that, or is that coming down the road?
That was never part of the statute. I understand that there were lots of discussions about that, and to a certain extent, it would certainly help not to have to put this on local government to do with this, that it may make more sense to have a body with expertise who could look at these complaints and investigate them, but that's not how the statute is written. The statute is written that each municipality must deal with these complaints.
Okay. And this is just for towns, nothing for the schools?
I do not have any knowledge about how it applies to the schools, but this does apply to state employees as well under a different
No, but I mean,
process.
when the legislature decided for the local levels, they're just doing it for towns and town officials and employees. Schools don't have the ethics policy from the legislature?
I have no knowledge of whether what the school ethics policy is. I only looked for the municipality.
When I read through this, I don't see a lot of difference between an ethics policy and a conflict of interest policy, because you can have the same results, and if you're ethical, you probably aren't going to be the conflicts of interest, but I'm concerned about too much confidentiality. Only the select board chair will hear complaints that are made against the town manager or people we appoint to boards and committees. I would think the entire board would have to be aware. I mean, we're the employer and supervisor of the town manager. We as a board appoint the citizens to boards and committees, so I'm concerned that 6 of us are going to be in the dark. I realize a lot of these complaints are probably going to be frivolous, but for the ones that aren't, I would hate to have something go on for a couple of weeks or months before the rest of us find out.
And that's really up to you folks in developing, if you want to make it, if you want to, the chair could say, I will share all of these complaints, or that could become part of the policy, that it becomes, that it's shared with the rest. That is not anything that I can make a decision about. It's not anything the Ethics Commission can make a decision about. There is an issue when you share something with 7 individuals. How confidential will it remain? I don't know. That's up to you folks. If you want to change the policy to have the reporting of a complaint against the town manager, how that's handled, that's up to you folks.
But Dan, can I just ask, so in the case where the board chair investigated a board member on planning commission, and it was found that they violated the ethics policy, then at that point, is the policy that then the select board would decide what could be brought in to decide what the result should be? I mean, because we might decide that person should be asked to leave the board, yes? So what we're talking about here is what happens initially, so that people that are accused of something, and they might be acting in a very ethical way, and it's a, someone just has it out for them, who knows, then that does not become sort of broad knowledge among the board. And so it's investigated and then dealt with if there is actually an issue.
That's it, and this is how our council and the Ethics Commission advised us to do this.
Yeah.
But it's not set in stone, and I guess that's my point, is the board has the authority to modify how it wants complaints to be investigated.
Yeah. For my 2 cents, I think, I mean, I won't be board chair, but I would want it to be closely held because they've been accused of something, and I want to make sure that they get a fair shake at being investigated, so that if they have not violated the policy, I don't want that to sort of taint their reputation in the minds of 7 people who are aware that this allegation was made.
I'd be curious to know if that sort of solution-based conversation is helpful. I hear what you're saying about an entire board made a decision to appoint someone, and if that someone needs to be removed, it should be up to the body, not a person, a chair, et cetera. But I like Jeannie's description of that, in that if we agree on the way that a determination is reached, which is the policy itself, or part of the policy, and so that planning commission member who it was determined violated a policy, the outcome or what should be done to resolve that complaint should come before the full board. If it's determined through appropriate measures that there was no grounds for the complaint, then keeping it confidential, it sounds smart to me because it protects that person from a false complaint.
So Planning Commission, just want to clarify, Planning Commission might be a bad example because they're advisory.
Yeah.
It's folks like the DR, but a Development Review Board member who has quasi-judicial authority. So yes, and this policy does not say that the chair gets to mete out the discipline. This says that the chairperson gets to determine who and how that investigation occurs. That chairperson may say, I want to grab my vice chair and another select board member and do an investigation by committee. It's just, there has to be someone or some body that makes that decision about how that investigation is done.
Would it be worthwhile to alter the policy, depending on where this board comes to, that if it is confirmed that a complaint has merit, that a board decision is required in dealing with that complaint?
It says a select board. It says that already.
Yes.
So if you look on page 4, the elected or appointed officials, the select board may take lawful action. So it's not one member, it's the full select board.
Right.
So I like protecting someone's privacy until
I do too.
There is a need to not
Once
do
that violation is confirmed, that's when you folks have to act.
So a full board would have to act according to the way this is written. There's no subject of interpretation here.
No.
Okay.
The select board chairperson has no authority to discipline elected officials or appointed officials without the full backing of the board. That's a board action.
Yeah, Clark.
On Nancy's concern, one of my concerns would be basically create a quorum. If we start doing this as a board, which again, we slide into the open meeting laws with possibility of confounding that, and in the sense of what I consider giving people their due process, the idea that we've got 7 people publicly discussing somebody's ethics may not be a fair situation. So if I would prefer the idea of a non-quorum entity, 3 board members maybe would be the individuals who look at the issue and based on their findings, if it came down to a public removal of that person, then making it a board issue so it's open to the public. But I'm concerned about,
So you're suggesting a non-quorum group of this board from the beginning of the process. So it's smaller than a full board for confidentiality purposes, but it isn't single point dependency, which I think a few of us, including myself, are uncomfortable with.
Right, that's why I think, we'd have a non-quorum, more eyes looking at the issue in a confidential manner and going forward from there.
Do we have the authority if that's what this board wanted to do?
So I'm just trying to make sure I understand what the thought is, and I think I understand it, and I think it's a good one. Basically, we're saying that if you look at page 2, the select board chairperson shall review every complaint against an elected official.
Page 3, yeah, the investigation of elected appointed officials.
Well, no, just where we're talking about the complaint itself, where it first goes. If you look at the 1, 2, 3, 4th paragraph down, the select board, on page 2, the select board chairperson shall review every complaint against an elected or appointed official, shall determine what, if any, further investigation is necessary to make a determination with respect to the complaint. I think the suggestion is that the select board chairperson and 2 other individuals designated by the select board. Is that what we're saying, like a 3-person?
I'd say up to. Yeah, I'm not sure you need 3 for.
Well, it's up to you folks how you want to do that.
I would be more comfortable with up to 3, because that way the chair and vice chair could do it.
Or it could be the chair and but I think we have to have a policy. Is it the chairperson who makes that determination, or is it the chairperson and the vice chairperson together, or is it the vice chairperson and 2 other select board members identified each year by the select board? You guys just have to have that, because we want to know what we want to know who we're reporting to.
What if it's I'm uncomfortable with saying that there need to be 3 people. I think I am. What if it's the chairperson and the vice chair? I think there's a lot of value. I do think there's a lot of value in not putting it on one person. I mean, Michelle does this for her job, so as HR director, and that's a very different situation. It's like us reviewing any complaints, right?
It's daunting.
So, yeah.
I think phraseology, non-quorum is probably a little better because, as you know, all of us have lives. You may, in fact, not be available as the chair or the vice chair. So the idea of non-quorum, and I think part of a good governance, in my opinion, is involving everybody. Everything doesn't have to go through the chair. All of us have.
I think it does. I think it does need to have the chair or vice chair
or a specific designee. But
yeah, there has to be somebody. Yeah, I think it isn't just like 3 select board members. It isn't.
Can it be chair or vice chair and? To appease the majority here, could it be the chair or vice chair and 2 other members of the select board?
I like that. I think that's a really good compromise.
Yeah, that works fine.
Yeah, has something
quorum. I may be just too broad, but on page 3 where it talks about the investigation, it says a select board chairperson or their designee. So it gives the chair the opportunity to designate those people, 1 or more, that are going to be involved in the actual investigation. The complaint comes to the chair. The chair determines how it gets investigated. And I think that's already there. I think it gives you the flexibility that you're looking for without writing it down in.
Let me give you a scenario, though, and I'll just go right into the deep end here. A complaint is filed against somebody on the DRB. It comes to the attention of the chair, and the chair reaches out either to the vice chair or to someone so that she can have counsel with someone else, he or she. And when the resolution comes out, another board member says, I would have liked to have known about that. I have an opinion, or I have a something. That's why I'm wondering if it doesn't make sense for this board to agree in advance and as a part of the policy, how many people and who.
So the
And maybe
problem,
I'm nitpicking.
so I think the problem with the example you just gave is that I'm not going to say, Joe Blow, we've gotten a complaint against Joe Blow. Anybody want to be on a subcommittee? Because then we've done exactly the thing that we do not want to do, which is share that information. So I think
Good point.
it makes, I do think it comes to the chairperson. I do think that it makes sense to
Or their
have a small,
designee.
or their designee, but a designee is one person, it's not designees. And we don't want it to come to designees. I think it needs to come to one person. I think there's no, I think we're all in agreement that we would like to have more than one person review a complaint, and I think that's a good idea. So if under the investigation of elected or appointed official, if we could say the select board chairperson or their designee in consult with no more than 2 other select board members.
Okay.
We could do that. Because I think it has to come to one person, and then, and quite honestly, that one person is going to know who this is and may have thoughts about who would be good to investigate this as well, both in terms of there's already some, there's already something.
There's history or there
There's
isn't.
history, right, yeah. Yeah, because I don't think it's just you raise your hand and you say, oh, I'd like to be on the investigating team.
I think nobody's going to raise their hand. I like that. I wonder if that, I wonder if that addresses everyone's concerns, and I think it addresses mine. I don't imagine that there's room for ambiguity here. In the event that a complaint came to the chair and it was significant enough that he or she asked for input from 2 other people, as it's in the policy, but if the chair and vice chair dealt with something that was less serious, I'm using that as for lack of a better word, that's also acceptable.
Right, it'd be less than 3. Jean, you had a comment, question?
Yeah. The first part, before the investigation piece, I know it's highly unlikely, but let's just face it, we live in a really small town and we know everyone and we're related to a lot of other people. If the complaint was filed against a person who was a family member or a close friend of the chair, I think the designee needs to be included.
Oh, I do. Yeah, it should be chairperson or designee. Yeah, I agree.
But not in the first part. On page 2,
I think
the select board chairperson shall review every complaint. If the person who the complaint is regarding is the chairperson's sister, the chairperson cannot do that.
Exactly. So what will happen is the complaint comes to the chair. The chair says, oh, that's my sister.
Right.
That's not good. And so then you go over to page 3 where it says, the select board chairperson or their designee shall oversee investigation of elected or appointed official. So all that's happening initially is you're that point person. Yeah.
But it says they shall review. They shouldn't be reviewing.
No, it says select board chairperson or their designee, and we were going to add.
On page 2 you are, right?
It's just coming to you. It's not.
I think that the point that...
Oh, I see what you're saying. The select board chairperson shall review every complaint.
Right.
But not investigate it.
Right.
So all they're doing is they're
I don't think they should be doing
receiving
either.
it.
So you have to review it to know if it's even
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and then as soon as you see it, you're
That's
out.
right. That's what review means.
Only the person who has taken it on for the first view would know that it's their own sister.
And
right?
then they would say.
And then on the bottom of every agenda, it tells us to review every item to make sure we don't have a conflict, and we would be required to do so in every situation, including an ethics complaint. So if it was my sister, I would have to recuse myself and pass it along to one of the other members that committed to
Yeah, all review means here is that you see it, and then you're like, oh, this doesn't work for me.
I can or I cannot.
Yeah.
That would be the unintentional consequence of just the chairperson seeing that, if that case you're playing out
Well, no,
were
'cause
to
that's-
happen. Just one second, please.
Yeah, that's why it says designee on the, and under the investigation.
Yeah, can I finish, please? So yes, so if the chair were to see that complaint that you're saying play out, the chairperson would see that complaint that you were talking about doesn't come out until everything's already played out, because that chairperson has already seen everything. If the sister, in this hypothetical scenario, has, so that's the unintentional consequence of that playing out. Yeah.
And if let's just say the Human Resources Director knew that this was your sister.
So, can I interject just a little? This has been reviewed by council, reviewed by the Ethics Commission. We can come up with all kinds of minuscule possibilities, and we'll have to deal with them, but we can't deal with every single possibility in a policy. We have to accept that everybody's acting in good faith, and we're going to move forward. As far as how the complaints are reviewed, I understand if you want it to be the select board, you want it to be 2 select board members, you want it, as far as they're being investigated, that's certainly something, but I don't know if we want to go back to the drawing board. It's up to you folks if you want to, but this policy has been reviewed by council, has been reviewed by the Ethics Commission. They do find it to be sound. I
think it's important here to remember that if the chairperson did receive a complaint, so it was about their sister, they would be bound by other ethics.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bound by the policy. Yeah.
By the policy.
If they investigated their own sister, that would be a violation of the ethics policy, which.
Right.
Okay. So can we not go? So if we added this, if we added the sentence, would that take care of it? I think Dan wrote it down.
So under investigations of elected or appointed officials, it now states the select board chairperson or their designee, and then we're adding suggestion, in consultation with no more than 2 other select board members, shall oversee investigations of elected or appointed officials and may perform the investigation of the complaint or appoint an individual or individuals to carry out the investigation. So you're adding in that the chairperson would be in consulting with up to 2 select board members. Now you can say, shall consult with 2, may consult, that's up to you folks. I think shall consult with up to 2, because then that's an imperative.
Removes the ambiguity.
Yeah.
So instead of up to 2, it'd be 2.
Yep.
Well, okay, well, if you want always to have a 3-person committee, that's fine.
I think always is better than sometimes.
Yeah.
So the change would be the select board chairperson or the designee shall, in consultation with 2 other select board members, oversee investigations of. And then that takes care of your, not one person reviewing these complaints.
Do you feel like it should be the same 2?
No.
No.
I don't think it should be.
No, and I don't think it, I think that's getting in the weeds.
I think you got to let the select board chairperson do that, and if you guys are unhappy with the way that chairperson is doing it, you can remove them, or,
I'm not really going to care.
Something.
I still go back, I understand, yes, we'd like to keep things confidential, but you're going to have members of the public filing complaints, depending on who it is. They'll probably post their complaint on the internet, so everybody's going to hear about it. And the concern I have that you haven't thought about is we're going to have people saying, well, so-and-so filed this complaint and only one person looked at it, so nothing's going to happen. I think that's something you haven't thought about, and I still go back to, the 7 of us are elected. And if we could draw a magic line between the chair handling things that are going to be frivolous or something, that could potentially have a lot of merit to it. I think it's going to come back to us if the chair says, well, I'll investigate, it may take several weeks, and it turns into something big. I don't think the rest of us should be in the dark about it.
I think there has to be a degree of confidentiality. I think there has to be a degree of confidentiality.
All right, so it sounds like, is there anyone else that has a new point that they want to bring up on this?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I think that the changes you were just mentioning were on page 3. Can we just pull those over to page 2? And then if nobody else has anything, I'd be ready to make the motion.
So what about page 2?
Page 2, it's the 4th paragraph.
What do you, I know, but what are you saying?
So it's directed to Dan.
Yeah, what's the recommendation?
You had mentioned the recommendations to Select Board Chairperson and their designees shall oversee.
Well, that's on page 3 under investigation of elected or appointed officers.
And I'm just suggesting Select Board Chairperson on page 2, 4th paragraph down.
Yep.
Select Board Chairperson and designees shall review.
No. So the point here is that the complaint comes in, you see it's from Susie Q, and you say, Susie Q is my cousin, so now I know what the complaint is about. I know who the complaint is about. I am going to delegate to 3 other select board, like I wouldn't, Susie Q is my cousin. I'm not going to be part of that, of the investigation. Review means you get the initial complaint, you see who it's about. If it's not appropriate for the chair to be on that committee, then they aren't. But we want to keep this as confidential as we possibly can. So I would be very opposed to making it a group effort to see who the complaint is about, because the whole point here is not to do that.
I'm going to raise something
That's just what I am suggesting.
I'm going to raise a point that we haven't raised before, and that is that we have to rely on the chair. That's why we have a chair. So that chair needs to live up to their commitment, including all the policies, this policy and every other policy that we've agreed to in our role here. So I think on good faith, we have to trust that the chair is going to delegate. They're going to, if it's appropriate, they're going to swiftly investigate to make a determination, and the resolution will then be public. So I am in agreement that the chair reviews from the start to determine next steps of a complaint.
I see where you're coming from, and I have felt that way myself, but I feel that we're in a time where there's a lot of mistrust, so that's why I'm bringing that up at this point for this policy.
Okay. Does someone want to make a motion?
I have something I'd like to add.
Okay, go ahead.
It won't get done, but I'll add it anyways. I have a problem with up to 3 people on the board being able to go off on their own, talking behind closed doors to other officials and groups and organizations. I don't think this was happening more than 8 or 9 years ago, and I think it puts the majority of the board at a disadvantage when we're being kept in the dark while a few members are working on deals.
Does this have anything to do with the ethics
Sure.
policy?
I don't think it's ethical that this has happened for several years.
Nancy, we're reviewing a policy.
I'm asking to make an addition to the policy.
And what is the addition you're making?
That the entire board needs to get the same information at the same time, that 1, 2, or 3 members cannot go off on their own.
This is a policy on investigating allegations of ethics violations.
Well, I don't feel it's ethical that this has gone on for the past several years.
Right. Well, let's talk about the future. This policy has been vetted by council and it is in line with state statute guidance. Dan, I'm looking to you for the right words.
State Ethics Commission has approved of it.
I think we have to take our lead from places that are better vetted at this than we are.
It's also a policy on investigating and enforcing alleged violations. It's not, if you want a policy on something else, that's its own policy. But this is a policy required by the state on how we conduct investigations of alleged violations.
Yeah, and I would just like to add that this policy is to protect the person that the complaint, it's not about giving the select board the information. It's about protecting the confidentiality for this person that the
And
complaint is
handling
being
the
filed for.
complaint appropriately.
That's the purpose of it.
Yeah.
It's not for the select board to have all the juicy information.
It's not about juicy information. Like I said, I think a lot of these complaints are going to be frivolous. If the time comes where there's something that's serious, I don't think one or two people on the board should be discussing and investigating it for a couple of weeks. I mean, this could lead to criminal charges.
Well, I disagree with you 100%. I think that's more of a reason why it needs to be kept to a very small group, to keep it confidential.
Yes, and then once, if a determination has been found that a violation has occurred, then it comes to the entire select board.
Which
So
we've
I'm going to
already
ask for a
covered.
motion again. I think we're now sort
Jeannie,
of
I think
spiraling.
there's someone on the end here that...
I just wanted to reiterate my concern that a whole board process would subject us to the open meeting laws and again, completely do away with any confidentiality or due process for fairness for the individual accused. So I understand your concerns, Nancy, but I think in the big picture, and I've done it on other commissions, having a working group of 2 or 3 people addressing a problem, which they then bring back to the entire board for us all to hear what's there and make our decisions and move forward. But I think during the investigative or the initial complaint phase, I don't think it's fair to the individual to have as a broad group of people discussing the issue on what I consider at that point accusations and maybes.
Innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
Yeah.
So I understand your concern, but I really think the idea of a non-quorum working group is best for all parties involved.
I agree.
And just to clarify, if indeed there is concerns, if there's found to be conflict, that will come to the full board in executive session when you guys will then decide under, personnel matters, how you're going to deal with this. And you'll also, if it's a significant issue, you'll have the advice of counsel to determine what's appropriate measures you can take, what can you disclose, what can't you disclose. All those things will be handled in that executive session when you folks, the group that investigates, reports to the full board.
All right, I'm going to ask again
I
for a
make
motion.
a motion that we adopt this policy with the change that Dan, I think Dan has it.
Yeah, I do, and I'm happy to read it again if
You probably need to read it for us again, Dan, and tell us where in the policy, please.
So in contemplation of a motion, the proposed change to the interim policy is on page 3, immediately under the heading Investigation of Elected or Appointed Officers. And the language proposed is the Select Board Chairperson or their designee shall, and then the added language, in consultation with 2 other Select Board members, and then continuing on with existing language, oversee investigations of elected or appointed officers and may perform the investigation of the complaint or appoint an individual or individuals to carry out the investigation. So, not to belabor it, but the 3 folks who are looking at it might say, we want to hire outside counsel to look at this because this is bigger than us.
We need that flexibility.
Yeah, and that's in this policy.
That's my motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the motion?
Yes, I would like to add this, on second page, paragraph 4, Select Board Chairperson and Vice Chair shall review.
Where is that again?
Page 2, is that page 2?
Yes.
Can we do that in the
Paragraph
same
down.
motion? The motion's on the floor, so we're discussing this motion.
We had yes, the motion's on the floor.
The motion's on the floor.
This is discussion on the motion, and I think that we're talking about
In addition, possibly.
changing the motion.
To read the paragraph, read the sentence that you'd like.
Page 2, paragraph 4. The Select Board Chairperson and Vice Chair shall review every, sorry, I'm getting echoey here, shall review every complaint against or elected, etc.
If we do that, does that mean to avoid a quorum problem, which I think we would have then, because then that means that the chair and the vice chair would be always on the committee, because of then only one other person, because otherwise you end up with quorum problems, because 4 people, so we're violating open meeting law if we do that. unless we say that 2 of the 3 people will always be the chair and vice chair.
An alternative to that could be the select board chairperson and designee.
Well, that's a problem because then if you don't know, so Stuart says, we've gotten a complaint, or Michelle, whoever's telling me they've gotten a complaint. So the chair says, okay, Sarah, you and I look at it. We look at it, it's Sarah's cousin. So now Sarah is in the loop.
She has to recuse.
She has to recuse.
So
what would we see?
I don't.
Because then we would just see the name, right?
I don't want to complicate this more, but this all has to do with personnel. So I'm not terribly concerned about quorum issues. If you folks want to have if you think it's efficient for the select board chairperson and chair to review every complaint before it goes to make a determination of how you're going to review it, I don't think there's a quorum issue. It's just whether or not that's how the board wants to operate.
I think Jeannie's concern was that requires 2 people in the know from the start. There can only be 1 more, so that it's not a quorum when it requires.
So because you're investigating, because it has to do with personnel matters, I'm not concerned about the quorum issue.
Okay. Because that could be, if it's my cousin, then we're in that same boat.
It's just whether or not you guys think it's efficient for every complaint that comes in for the chair and the vice chair to get together. Review.
And just because the chair and the vice chair review the initial complaint doesn't mean they both have to be part of the investigating.
I believe that
is accurate, but then what happens is that then you have 4 people out of the 7 in the know, and what we're trying to do is control the initial information.
Just in the know. Okay, yeah. You can't unsee it once you see it.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly.
That's true.
Yeah. I mean, if there have to be 3 people to investigate, then it feels like 1 person can receive the complaint.
It's an administrative, ministerial process.
It's that we've got a complaint, we need to form a subcommittee so that we can look at this complaint and make sure that no one has a conflict.
The fact that we said shall in the other language that we just altered in the original motion, I think it covers us in terms of eyes on it. So I'm comfortable with Sarah not including I apologize, not including your edit.
That's why we're all here having different discussions.
Thank you, though.
Any other discussion on this motion that's on the floor?
Does anybody want to wait until the next meeting to see what, you don't care what members of the public have to say? Okay.
I think this is the select board's policy, and we have 8 policies in front of us for tonight.
And we're 35 minutes behind.
Yep.
And this was warned for tonight. So the public is here. If the public has input, I imagine that we're going to ask the public for input before we go to final vote. Jeannie, am I right?
On this? No. Who's going to do it right? I mean, you mean right this second?
These folks
Oh, absolutely. Yes, right this second. Yes.
We revisit these how often? We revisit
annually.
Annually, okay. So if this doesn't really work well for us, we can choose something next year.
Yeah.
You could do it next month if it
That's a very good point. There's no requirement that it only be changed annually, but we are required to review it annually.
Okay. All right, so any comments from the public on this? Any thoughts? Yes, please. Come on up and introduce yourself.
And thank you for hanging in.
You're welcome. You have to do 6 more policies?
Maybe.
I think 7.
All right, Sarah Beth Ward from Bennington. I have to agree with Nancy. I think that it should be the whole board that gets to see the complaint. I understand what you're saying, confidentiality. What makes you be able to have confidentiality more than Nancy? Like, I'm just saying, like, if you can't do confidentiality, you shouldn't be on the board.
Appreciate that, yeah.
So, like, I understand where Nancy's coming from. It should be everybody that makes the decision.
I appreciate that,
not just 1 or 2.
Great, thanks.
But I think this policy says that the board will make the final decision.
They will, yes. Yes. All right, are we ready to vote?
I am.
All right, all those in favor of the motion as presented, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, please say no.
No.
Any abstentions? All right.
Thank you very much.
Got that?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Jeannie, would you sign the signature page on that policy?
Yeah,
and date it?
I was gonna ask you about
And
that.
we'll amend it, and then we'll amend it.
Okay.
And attach it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, next policy is the Social Service Agency Appropriation Policy and the policy for agency appropriations within the budget. So this was the terrible, terrible attempt last meeting to make a policy out of what we had. So they've done a really nice job of creating two separate policies for us, one for Social Service Agency appropriations and the other for any agency appropriation within the budget.
So this covers...
So the first one is social services being able to petition to be on the ballot.
Got it.
Is the first one. All right, and it outlines the purpose, outlines who is eligible to do this, and then the applicability, and then what the process is. And thank you, Stuart. This feels really thorough and covers what we do at present. And then the second policy is for those few agencies that are in the budget, BCRC, the Rescue Squad, two libraries, and Lake Perrin. And we had a conversation, the vice chair and I had a conversation with the town manager and assistant town manager about moving the $6,000 for recreation at the village that sort of goes back to them, moving it out of this part and putting it in the budget under recreation, which seems to make a lot more sense.
And the key word here is essential between the two different scenarios. So I appreciate that distinction.
Yeah, essential and necessary services that are in the budget. So, anyone have any thoughts about any concerns or changes for either one of these?
I just want to echo what Jeannie said, and that this is the result of a struggle that we were having at the last meeting, and this came out, I think, what we intended. So thank you.
Yeah, Jean.
I haven't read the statutes under, what is it? The Social Service Agency appropriations. Does the fact that they need to be not-for-profits, is that addressed in the statute?
No, I think this is.
It is not addressed in the statute because they don't necessarily need to be nonprofit.
Okay, because they don't talk about a 990.
It's the social service program or agency.
Okay.
And it really doesn't do with the issue of nonprofit status.
So under the appropriations within the budget, they have to submit a 990, which is only for not-for-profits. Is that true?
That is true.
Okay, so we're treating them differently. The ones that are within the budget have to be a not-for-profit. The ones that are on the ballot do not. Is that accurate?
The first policy deals with how a social service agency or program gets on the ballot. Once they are on the ballot and successful, then the second part kicks in for previously approved social service agency request. Now we're looking at a Form 990 or a balance sheet.
Right, but you just said that the first...
The statute doesn't deal with the nonprofit status. It just so happens that most of the agencies that are applying for funding are nonprofit, but they can submit a Form 990 or they can submit a balance sheet signed by the president or CEO.
Okay, so if they're not a not-for-profit, then they won't be submitting a 990.
That's correct.
That's not clear.
Yes. No,
It is clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Number 5, paragraph 5.
Where?
Under required documents in the last page.
It says if the agency does not file an IRS Form 990,
Oh, okay,
it must
okay.
include.
Thank you, thank you.
And I have to give the town of Morristown, Vermont credit for this policy.
We get by with a little help from our friends.
Yeah, we always do.
As far as more than one agency sharing the same petition for signatures?
Yes. That's a
Yes.
Secretary of State determination that was made during the COVID crisis, allowing agencies to double up, triple up, as many as they want, as long as they got the necessary signatures to be on the ballot. That has not changed. So
we're
it's the
following
Secretary of State ruling that
You
allows
mean
agencies to double
5
up.
agencies could be on one petition and
Yes.
share the same signatures?
Yes.
Any other questions,
Yeah.
comments?
On the second page, and I brought it up, I'll bring it up again tonight, where the board decided that all of the agencies on the ballot that used to be given 10 minutes a year at a regular meeting, now they're given 3 minutes, one right after another at town meeting. I think the board has a pretty good double standard going. I think over the last year, some of the groups that have been invited in, which I don't mind hearing from any of them, but I think if you're going to pick and choose, well, we'll have groups A, B, and C come in, but the groups that are going to be on the ballot, we'll give them 3 minutes the night before voting, so I think it's a double standard.
Just to clarify how someone comes here, like Habitat tonight, they request to be on the agenda, and we have, there has never been a group that we have not put on the agenda that has asked to give a presentation. So anyone that doesn't come in, it's because they have not requested to come in. And if you think about it, many of those organizations have been here over the last year because they're involved with the town, so it comes up. But any organization can request to be on an agenda, and, you know, we very commonly have someone give a presentation about, you know, whether it's Green Mountain Express, or whether it's Turning Point, or whether it's Habitat. Any organization can request to have time.
Or be invited to participate, which I think, Jean, you said that Habitat was here because you encouraged them.
Yeah, you asked, yeah.
But you encouraged.
Jeannie,
Yeah. So they can always come in. We added, it used to be that agencies did not come in on town meeting, and so there would be no one to speak to those ballot items. And so we did start requesting a couple years ago that they make themselves available. Someone from their organization should come down here and be available at town meeting. That doesn't preclude them from being here during any other agenda, but again, it's not, that's not what this policy is. This policy is addressing how you get on the ballot. Or get placed in the budget.
What I'm bringing up is part of the policy.
Say again?
What I'm bringing up is part of the policy, saying they may make a brief presentation. What used to happen, they used to all be invited to a regular agenda, and then groups would decide the night before town meeting. Some, if not most, would come in to give like one last push. So I'd just like to make sure that all the agencies understand they can request to come in, just so that it's fair for everybody across the board.
And in fact, we invite them all.
The night before town meeting?
We've been sending out invitations over the last week.
Okay, but again, Do they know they're welcome to ask if they can come in one time during the year?
Yes, they do.
Everybody knows that.
Yes,
We've
they
never
do.
turned anyone down, was Jeannie's point earlier.
Yeah.
So it's not part of the policy, but maybe it's a reminder, Nancy, that we need to offer up throughout the course of the year. It's not a part of policy, and I understand that, but we should be reminding
Well, I don't think we had a policy. It just used to be automatic. And then the groups, as I said, the night before town meeting, usually several would come in to give one last push. And now, everybody obviously is here the night before voting. I just want to make sure each agency knows they're welcome if they'd like to ask to come in during a regular agenda.
You can also request that you'd like them on an agenda like I did tonight.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to before, yeah.
All right, so anything on the policy?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept this policy as presented.
Is there a second? Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstention? All right, it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, now we move on to the big ones. So what we have, town manager had a good suggestion, which was just to give us the packet of all the rest of the board policies that we haven't reviewed. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. And what I'm going to ask is, we've all had a chance to go through them. Are there any that we cannot approve tonight? Are there any that should be pulled out for specific concerns about them, and if so, which ones and what concerns? Yes, Nancy.
Jeannie, last summer and the fall, you and Ed said a couple of times, we would review each town policy by March. And I would ask
By March 31st, just sharing.
I would ask that we table these and put them on agendas in the future so we can do a proper review, rather than give them the old rubber stamp tonight.
Well, we actually voted to review all these policies by March 31st. That's what the push is. We voted unanimously to do that. Now, we're not rubber stamping anything. They're all here. We've all had a chance to read every single one of them. Some of them, like the policy to dispose of properties acquired at tax sale, is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines long. So these are not, for the most part, huge policies, and we've all had them in our packets. So I'm asking, you guys all read them. Is there anything that you don't agree with in them? Is there any policy we should pull out to take up at the next meeting?
I'd like to take the sign policy out.
What is it in particular that's concerning you, so town staff can be working on that?
I'd like to take
Nancy,
the local
did you hear my
options.
question?
Well, Jeannie,
I'm asking you because we are trying to look at these policies. If there is something that, have you read the policies?
Jeannie, I'm aware of the policies, and I think we have issues with a couple of policies.
So I'm asking you what?
And I would ask why you and Ed didn't get these policies on the agendas earlier, so we could have had the time to go through them at meetings.
Well, we did try, and we have been reviewing them for several months now, and what happens is we end up being very, very far behind. So for instance, the ethics policy, I think this might be the 4th time it's come to us, if not the 5th, and that is because we're doing this. Can you, if we should pull out the policy on display, is it the display one that you're talking about? Which one are you talking about?
I said the sign policy.
Yeah, so the policy on display signs and art on public property policy.
Request for changes in zoning.
So can you?
Nancy, can you tell us what?
No, you can't do zoning. We can't.
Nancy, you have to tell us what your issues are with a policy that you'd like us to exclude from tonight's discussion, and the reason.
I won't bother.
Why?
We're asking you to...
Again, we were supposed to do this the proper way and have
This is the proper way.
I can see the first one is very short.
Okay, that
And I
makes
also
sense.
question
Should
why
we
we're in
move
such a
forward with
rush
that
you
one?
don't want to hear from the public. I would think we would have citizens that would have some concerns about some of the sign policy, which is what, 4 pages long?
Actually, there were no public comments on anything this week, as we all saw from Jonah, and we will ask the public if they have any concerns
But I
on
think
any
that-
of these.
I think we were elected to do the town's work, and I'm here to get this done tonight.
So, and if it makes more sense, all right, policy to dispose of properties acquired at tax sale. Does anyone have any concerns about this policy? All right, so that one can stay in.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion right now that we adopt the policy to dispose of properties acquired at tax sale.
No, I don't want to do it all at once.
That's not a motion. We're not trying to do it that way.
So next is policy on sidewalk cafe and seating licenses. Are there any specific concerns about this policy?
I have none. Keeping in mind that the last paragraph, I'm sorry, the third from the last paragraph on this page, the license can be canceled at any time by the town. So I'm comfortable.
Oh, geez, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. Jean, do you have any concerns about this policy? Clark, do you have any concerns?
I was just trying to follow up on Ed's comment about the license maybe canceling.
Yep.
That's just like, why? I mean, there had to be some predicate for cancellation.
Well, when we do them, when we vote on them, we could say, I'm okay with all the policies here except for, Joe's Bar.
My example was the license to the sidewalk cafe and seating licenses. That
okay.
individual license could be canceled at any time by the town unless a specific term is approved by the select board. If the license has a term, the license may be terminated immediately by the town manager or his or her designee if the license holder fails to comply. So if something went wrong with that license, we have the right to revoke it. So I'm comfortable not separating it out.
I was thinking that first sentence, I thought maybe could remove that or modify it. Again, it's just they're canceled at any time. I see that, and I roll down to the latter part, and it goes specifics about failing to comply with the provisions of the license and all that. In my mind, that makes sense. You're not doing what the license says. License is void. So, but saying canceled any time, that's up in the air.
Yeah, I think one does have to read it as the whole licenses, no permanent improvements, and then licenses, permanent improvements. So you have to read the whole thing.
I do have one extremely minor correction in the policy on sidewalk cafe seating licenses. So there's no page number, but it's the second page of that license. Just for consistency's sake, the 4th paragraph down, it should be the last sentence, by town manager or his or her designee. It's his or her designee everywhere else except right there, and I'm sure it was just accidental.
It says modification, the one that starts with modification?
No, a clear space.
The last sentence says, is ended by saying, or convenience by town manager or his designee.
Yeah.
It should be his, her.
Oh.
It does say his, her.
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
It says his.
Oh, on the sentence above.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all.
For consistency
For
purposes,
consistency's
yes.
sake.
Okay. All right.
Okay, one modification to
Good
the
job.
to the second.
Boy. Okay. You got that modification? Okay. Sarah, any concerns about the policy on sidewalk cafe seating?
No, but I can make a motion for 2 now.
Okay,
Well, we're
hold
trying to
on.
wrap
We're
it
trying to
into
do
one
them
motion.
all because we are.
I don't see that happening, so I would like to push for a motion at this time.
All right, is there
I
a
can
second
put
to
for a
that
motion, and it can sit flat, but I'll push for a
Okay,
motion.
all right.
So right now,
is there a second to the
this is
motion?
currently his policy to dispose of properties acquired at tax sales on the table.
Oh, okay, I'm lost.
I'm going to start to move to adopt policy to dispose of properties acquired at tax sale. That is about 5 sentences. That's the first one.
No, she hasn't finished.
No, yeah, I did.
You are doing them one by one?
Yes.
Oh, okay, okay.
So I assume we're due for expedited. Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. All right, any more discussion on tax sale? All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Aye.
All right, one down.
Second is to adopt the policy.
All right, I'm just signing on the page, okay?
Yes, please.
So I think we're ready to make a motion on policy on sidewalk cafe seating licenses. If so, I'm going to make that motion.
All right.
With the adding the her to the his, her. Thank you, Jean. I have made the motion. I think Clark seconded it. Thank you.
All right. Any more discussion? This includes you guys. Don't at this point. I'm out of my mind. Yeah, shout if you have something. Okay. All right, hearing no more discussion. Further discussion. All those in favor, please say aye with the one change.
Aye.
Aye. That was unanimous, yes? Okay, perfect. All right. Third one, policy on town manager's process to fill department head positions. And this follows the charter, the Town of Bennington charter, which is quoted at the top.
So I will make a motion to adopt town manager's policy on process to fill department head positions for discussion.
And I'll second Sarah's motion.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that was unanimous, yes? All right, the next one is Town of Bennington policy on requests for changes in zoning.
Stu, is there nothing that comes before the Select Board anymore requiring zoning that needs public hearings?
Oh, yeah, the statute provides for public hearings at both the Planning Commission and Select Board level. The policy wouldn't need to deal with that.
Well, yes, because the policies used to say 2 public hearings, and it doesn't. And I know a couple of years ago, the board approved that massive package of zoning changes, one 15-minute meeting on Zoom where that was done at the same public hearing.
You're talking about the land use changes?
I'm talking about
the land use development review. That was not 15 minutes.
It has nothing to do with the hearing process. This just has to do with considering requests outside of the town plan process.
I'm just asking, if this, does anything that comes to the Select Board dealing with zoning anymore ever require a public hearing?
By state statute, everything that has to do with zoning requires a public hearing, at least one before the Planning Commission and the Select Board.
So we don't require 2 anymore, it's just 1?
It just depends on what type of change it is, whether it requires 1 or 2.
What determines only 1?
I don't recall, Nancy. I'd have to read the statute.
Okay, but I'm just saying, Dan, because I remember it used to always be 2 public hearings so that the public would have a chance.
2 under certain circumstances required by statute, and 1 in certain circumstances required statute. This board has the authority to have, you could hold 50 hearings if you wanted to. The board controls that. This is just the minimum. That would just be the minimum by statute.
50, we could hold 50 hearings if we wanted to. I want to make sure I understood you correctly.
Right. Thanks for that. Thanks for that. All right. Any other questions on policy on requests for changes in zoning?
Do we have a motion on the table?
We do not.
I'll make a motion that we accept the policy as drafted.
All right. Any further discussion? Right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. And then we move on to policy on local option tax revenue expenditures. Someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt the policy re-adopt the policy on local option tax and revenue expenditure.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
No, just correct the extra space in letter D.
Okay.
I know, send everything to.
Hate that.
All right. All right.
See it?
Yep.
Anything else? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Oh, sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Bob Ward, Bennington, Vermont. I'm just not clear on the option taxes. That's something that was talked about, but that's not something that's, is this something totally different?
No, it's, so there, we created a policy on local option tax revenue expenditures in the event that the voters of Bennington vote to have an option tax.
Okay, so it's not in effect now? Okay.
Right, no, this is
Okay.
this is a policy
Just
without
wanted to
a
check that.
mandate at this point, yeah.
Okay.
No, and when the town voted, it was on a ballot 5 or 6 years ago. The voters absolutely buried each of the 4 option taxes. They made it clear they don't want options taxes in Bennington.
Taxing anybody, not just people from the town.
So we're not having that discussion. What we're looking at is the policy.
I just wanted to clarify.
So let's
I know
be
there's
clear.
groups pushing hard.
So we have a motion on the floor, or do we?
No, we don't.
I'll make a motion that we...
we do.
Oh,
We do?
We do.
Oh, we do, okay.
Yes.
All right.
Oh, you and I, yeah.
Phew. That's good. Any further discussion on the policy? All right.
Yeah,
all those-
why not have the options on a ballot?
Because this is a policy on the tax revenue expenditures. This is not the process for, there is already a process for putting an option tax to the voters. So that's not what this is. This is if we had an option tax, this would govern how we expend.
But you're going to have 2 public
funds.
meetings to draft a budget as to how you would spend the money each year, correct?
That's what it says here.
If it passed? Okay. So you'd have the public hearings, but you wouldn't want to take them and put them on a ballot for the voters to decide?
So,
We would in the budget.
Huh?
Yeah.
yeah,
It would be on the budget. It would be part of the budget that is on the ballot. And maybe I'm not understanding
It'd be in the
question.
town budget?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's, I'm saying if you're going to go through the time to develop a budget and hear public input, but if it's, say there's 5 or 6 things the public are interested in, and the board said, well, we're going to spend it on these 2 areas, and then it will just be in the budget itself. The voters wouldn't really have a say, so.
well, they do. They elect the select
Right.
board and they vote on the budget. All right, any other discussion on this policy? All right, all those in favor of the policy as readopting this policy, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, good. And then we are up to the policy on display signs and art on public property. Yeah.
I know it talks about sign. Excuse me. Just talking to clerks, I hear me. You know, I see this in these thick book signs. I flip through here and I see things always discussing projects, painting and so forth, but I'm looking for something that specifically addresses signs, signage.
It does, in the front. Authority. So the Town of Bennington Select Board is authority pursuant to 24 VSA, blah, 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 to regulate or prohibit the erection of all these things, and that we have authority over public lands. And then it does say, I mean, we don't have it.
Yeah, I'm looking at the definitions. It's missing in there in terms of signage, and I know there's some question.
What is a sign?
Right, in the sense of, you know, what's covered, because I know we got our billboard anti-blight laws versus informational signs. I know there's a reference here about informational signs, all that stuff, but...
People aren't supposed to put signs on public policy without going through the procedure for approval. But follow-up has been pretty lax at times. Like when you see political signs all over town land, I know at one time they used to go around, Stu, didn't they pick up the signs and...
Yeah, but the state weighed in that those signs are technically free speech.
Not on town property.
Not on town property. Thank you, Dan.
We have an explicit policy, and I guess it's not here for some reason, that we do not allow political signs on town property. And Nancy, if you see one, we'd be happy to go pick it up, but we don't allow for political signs to go on town
But I
property.
thought that was in this policy originally, that people had to go through the process
They
to
do.
put signs on, okay.
In fact, if you look at the definition, and this is to Clark's point, which is a good one, under the definition of project, it includes wayfinding signs, historic signs, informational signs, regulatory signs, seasonal, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
So that's where the signs get defined.
Okay.
There. Just a kind of a reminder on why this is here, it's because we decided to be, as a community, somewhat flexible about what we allowed on town property, and we had to have a way that meets due process and treats everybody fairly to determine what art displays, et cetera, go on public property. Our previous policy was you don't get to do it. So that is one way to deal with this, but if you're going to have a policy that deals with what you're going to allow and not allow, there's a lot of process that has to go into it, and this was heavily reviewed by council, including the League of Cities and Towns, and in consultation with Montpelier and other towns. Unfortunately, if you want to have some flexibility of what you allow on town property, you have to have lots of criteria and lots of process to make sure that everybody's dealt with fairly. The other way is to just say, we're not going to allow it at all.
If groups are doing fundraisers, do they just check with the town office before putting signs out?
Not generally, no.
Okay. And what about where political statements are on a sign, left on town property?
Under Section 5, prohibited locations, I would imagine that this covers that.
Well, I would say, I mean, we have the POW MIA flags, which are covered under this as well. We have,
But those have been approved. I'm thinking...
No, those are grandfathered, actually. They're grandfathered.
I'm thinking if someone has a sign that's a political statement, not a campaign sign, a political statement, and they leave it out in a prominent place in town, and we know it shouldn't be there.
We'll pick it up.
Do we just take it and throw it away? Do we put it on the town? I'm talking if it's somebody on the select board or town staff. I know a couple of months ago, there was a sign I guess a lot of people were upset by, and it took 2 or 3 days for somebody to go pick it up, so do we just throw it out?
We will return it to the rightful owner if we know who they are. Otherwise, we throw it out.
But that's only if it's on public property.
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm not talking I'm talking public property.
Okay.
I'd refer us back to Section 5, prohibited locations.
Right. Well, as you folks may recall, one of my concerns, and I see this now, it talks about informational, historic signs, whatever. I remember our labors to get the Purple Heart signs up. There's some discussion as to whether or not they fell within the realm of the Vermont blight laws or anti-billboard laws kind of stuff. So I was hoping that we could highlight, or accentuate the fact that signs of that nature are in fact acceptable or not prohibited under the anti-blight statutes, that kind of stuff.
I think but wouldn't you want the select board, I mean, in the past, what's happened is those signs have come before the select board. So I mean, the question on Purple Heart was not whether the town was in favor, it was whether the state allowed such signs. So that was it was a state concern until it was resolved. It was not that the select board was opposed.
Well, I mean, I just remember when it popped up, the guys in North Bennington said, well, we'll put it on our town property, not a problem, boom. But I just think within the town working, it was never clear in my mind that if the little green out here on the corner of Bennington and Westbrook, that area there is clearly town property, that it was acceptable to put it there, but not acceptable to put it out on the far end of West Road that's clearly a state highway, that kind of stuff.
That's the difference, Clark.
Right.
The state highways, Vermont Agency of Transportation does not allow signs within the highway rights-of-way of those Class 1 town highways under 19 VSA. If it could have gone on the green at Benmont Avenue, because that is not controlled by the state of Vermont.
Right, well, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that in the public mind, it would be, folks probably have been less anxiety if folks say, well, we'll put it on what's clearly town property, which is how the North Bennington folks addressed it, versus the concern that, along 7 or whatever is being kind of a blight. But okay, that's all. I'm just looking here and I see that's in there, that informational historic signs. I think the fact that it says acceptable on town property is important in my mind.
I'd like to make a motion, and then if there's more discussion, to re-adopt the policy on displays, signs, and art on public properties.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That was unanimous? Yes?
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we did all the policies. All right, so next up, manager's report.
I have one action item for you this evening, and it's the 15th Annual Home Brew Festival street closure. The festival is scheduled for Saturday, March 3rd at the former Tuttle's lot. They are requesting to close that portion of Depot Street from the driveway at, I call it G-Bix, but I think they've changed their name slightly, to the public drive as you enter the parking lot. So it's a very small portion of the road that would be closed to through traffic from 6 a.m. until 6 p.m. on Saturday, May 3rd.
Can you just clarify what parking lot are we talking about?
The Depot Street parking lot, North Street parking lot, you have an entrance to a public parking lot off of Depot.
Behind
you have an
Village
entrance
Garage.
to that same lot off of North Street.
Off of, by G-Bix, next to G-Bix.
Behind Village Garage?
Yeah.
Yeah, right over there.
Oh, okay. So really short.
Yeah, it's,
Oh, okay,
it's a very small closure.
Okay, okay.
On that note, question, Stu, maybe it came before us for it. I assume they were applying for an outside consumption license?
That application will be handled through the town clerk's office and the liquor control board. It doesn't.
Okay, is that before we approve this?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. That license doesn't come to us.
Okay.
And they have talked to all of the adjoining property owners at the present time.
So if they don't get that license, they won't be serving alcohol, but they can close the road if we approve.
Oh, yes. I was going to say we're going to have a brew.
It's going to be a hard home brew.
Just saying.
Yeah.
I move that we make the road closure as requested.
Second.
All right. Any more discussion?
Well, on the report here?
No, on this motion.
Oh, okay, forgive me.
All those in favor of closing the road as indicated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That was unanimous. Right, perfect.
Okay, and then the only other question I had is at the very last piece on the listening sessions, and we don't have any additional listening sessions scheduled into April or June, and I just need to know your desire and how you would like to do that.
Do you want to wait for the new board?
I suggest that we wait for the new board, and I also suggest that April would be a lofty goal for a listening session.
Yeah, because it'll be a very new board.
It'll be a very new board.
So I think there's a little bit of time.
Yep.
And one other thing under your follow-up here, Stu, please. All these things with the public records request, to the average person seeing that, that's a god-awful amount of request here, but then I looked and realized the date is like 6-7 months worth. So I think to the layman, it maybe gives people a false impression that they're overwhelmed. Maybe we can restrict it to the latest month, the last month's worth of, or non-previously published request. The fact that somebody asked for something back in July, is that really germane in February? Following February, forgive me.
Can I just weigh in on that? I think it is helpful to see it all. I mean, I actually do look at counts, and so for instance, in the January 2nd to February 5th, there were 28 requests, and I think over time, you get a very good sense of who is making those requests and how they change.
And what
and what's
types
being
of things are
requested.
being
So I think it is, I think, helpful to have all of it. In this month, it's the same two top people putting in requests.
If I can just interrupt you and say this is the fiscal year, which I appreciate seeing at a glance. So that's, Clark, if you look at it that way, when I'm looking at this to see what's new, I look at what happened in the last 30 days, but then I can look back to see, if something looks familiar to me, I look back and say, was this resolved? And it's helpful for me to not have to go looking for it.
I think it's also, 28 requests, so we are way up on requests. Just want to say there were 8 anonymous requests this month, 8.
If you believe anonymous.
Well, they're not anonymous, but I mean, they put them in as anonymous. But I think it's helpful because I do think that at this pace, the communication coordinator position, we're going to have to do something at some point about the number of just the workload. I think. Yeah, and this is if we only look at the last 30 days, we don't have a sense of what Jonah's actually dealing with.
To your point, when that workload comes up to this board, it won't be a surprise that we have to take it up.
Yeah.
I'd like to save a tree and not do this as well. However, I do believe that everyone's always very, very sensitive on the public having information, and this is one way that the public has access to this information. And I would not be in favor of reducing the number of pages.
I was just looking at it since it's all a matter of, from all our previous months of seeing this, it's all there.
It's okay.
And the cumulative thing is just, again, off the top of it, somebody said, oh my God, look at all these requests, and then you realize, say, oh, we're talking about 8 or 9 months worth of requests. And yes, you're right, the numbers are up 28 a month, 30 a month. That number is something I think the average person will wrap their head around. That last month we had 20 requests, this month we have 15.
If they're paying attention, they know.
Maybe a header on this that says fiscal 25, because that's what we're in.
Oh, that makes sense.
That just simply describes the time period.
Yeah.
Year-to-date fiscal 25.
Yeah, that makes sense. And given that that for many years our average was what, 55 a year? Yeah.
That would be a great year-over-year comparison, although that's...
Well, I mean, Jonah did give us that.
He did at some point in the year,
Yeah. All right, anything else for Stuart? All right, upcoming agendas. What we have coming up is a discussion of the sand filter situation. We have no more policies. We have pickleball. What is it about pickleball?
Pickleball resolution is a potential grant that Shannon is working with the folks who have requested an opportunity to place more formal pickleball facilities, courts at Willow Park.
All right, and we're hoping to be able to put EV chargers on this next agenda. That feels like that's possible. The local emergency management plan annex for hot weather is moved to the second meeting in March because the chief will be out of town at a training, and he should be part of that.
That's 3/10-ish.
So March 10th is the sand filter, pickleball, and EV
we're already
chargers.
at this, yeah.
And then the 24th is the emergency
Lem
management
annex,
plan.
Yeah.
Yep. And the 3rd is town meeting. All right, other business. Tom, you want to start?
Let's see. Early voting is available right now, although with the election so close, if you have received an absentee ballot, you may want to consider dropping it off at the secure box in person or bringing it to the polls, given that sometimes mail takes a little while these days.
Clark?
Well, again, my standard shout out to the DPW crew. I'm glad you're going to get a break this weekend. Be able to spend time home with your families.
Nancy?
At the last meeting, I requested Jeannie contact the lawyers at the Vermont League of Cities and Towns. I wanted a copy of the state law, if it exists, that allows the Vermont Select Board to charge their own taxpayers for 40 years to subsidize a housing project with no voter approval. I haven't heard anything. Jeannie, did you contact the lawyers?
No, you were referring to the Ben High project, right?
Yes.
And that is not a housing project that we are subsidizing. So Stu, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Excuse me. This is a public-private project. The public, the people of Bennington have had no say. I don't understand how you think you can push the project forward when it gets done. How are you going to charge the taxpayers? Are you just going to put that money in the budget each year so the public will never have a say?
more than likely, the expenses to operate the senior center and the spaces adjoining that the town will be leasing will be part of the budget on an annual basis. The Select Board will have a chance to review those expenditures and place them in the budget for vote in March.
And can you give me an example in the past 50 years where our taxpayers have subsidized a public-private project or housing project?
I don't believe we've gotten into a project of this size. There have been times that we have leased spaces in privately owned buildings, but not to this extent, no. But there's no law that prohibits that, Nancy.
I would be very surprised if this could be done legally without voter approval.
Nancy, this entire project has been reviewed by multiple attorneys, including our own, and have been found to be in compliance with all laws. So our town council says it's in compliance. That's going to be good enough for town staff. There's no higher authority than our council when it comes to whether or not the town itself can do something. VLCT, the most they would say is check with your town council. We already have.
I was on the Ben High webpage looking today, and I noticed that on November 16th, an amendment to the lease and purchase agreement had been signed. Now, I don't remember when the board had a discussion and voted to approve that. Could you remind me of when that happened?
I believe that had to do with an extension of the time of the contract, which we did. We didn't bring it. I don't believe we brought that to the board when we extended the time.
All that did is extend the time at which we could terminate it didn't change any of the terms. It just gave us more rights.
Oh, I read it today. There was a couple changes made. It was very short. But in the past, the board has had to vote before any of these amendments can be approved for Stu to sign.
That lease, including that amendment, was included as part of the development agreement. So you did vote for that in the development agreement.
Well, it was on our agenda in October, and it was pulled off, so we didn't ever vote it.
You voted for the development agreement, which included that lease.
Well, I don't think we approved that so that it could have been signed.
Oh, my gosh.
Stu, at the budget, or when you were talking to the seniors a couple of weeks ago, and I brought up the fact that money that has been promised to the Ben High based on applications for grants and tax credits that said Meals on Wheels would be at the Ben High. Now they've been told they can't go there. Why wouldn't that money have to be returned?
Because the money there was never a grant that was issued on that project that was specific to the Meals on Wheels program locating in that facility. So the monies were not tied directly to the meals program. Even though when we talked about it, and when we presented it to the public, we had hoped that they would be able to do so. They were part of the discussion, but there are no grants. And in fact, there were 2 grants that were applied for that were specific to the meals program. One was denied, and either there wasn't sufficient funds for it, I don't recall. The second, the meals program actually withdrew the application for the grant. So there were no grants specific to the meals program that are in the project, and so there are no monies to be returned. Those applications or grants that were applied for that were specific to the meals program do not exist.
I'm talking it being located there, not...
I know what you're talking about, Nancy, but that was part of the, call it the grand design. We would have loved to have been able to have it there. Unfortunately, the developer can't afford it, and so it is not part of the project.
And I will add that we said from the beginning that this project would evolve over time, and one of the things that did evolve is now we have 100-plus seat student childcare, which wasn't part of the original project. So things change, but ultimately the project came together.
And there was no grant funding available to secure the Meals on Wheels fit out. That was the problem.
Well, there was a grant, and they actually asked that it be rescinded, and we do have that documentation.
They who?
Meals on Wheels.
There were two opportunities for funding directly for Meals on Wheels. One was denied, and I understand the other was withdrawn. Thank you. By the
Yes.
Meals on Wheels program.
Yes.
Also at that same meeting, Stu, you said Zach Hale would be talking to both Meals on Wheels and Council on the Aging. Well, he didn't talk about that the night of the Ben High meeting, so what's his plan?
Oh, he's already, well, he talked to them about the reasons why they would not be part of the project. That's what he was going to talk to them about.
And I can add that I did ask why the Council on Aging had decided not to come. And what I heard from a board member that's on the Council on Aging was that because of changes in state requirements, the Council on Aging has taken on the role of manager, so they now have, I believe, they have almost 10 case managers, and so their need for space increased tremendously, and so their current location allows them to address that, whereas Ben High would not. So there was an internal change in what they had to do as an agency that really drove their decision to not relocate.
Can we make a motion to adjourn and move into executive session? It is 9 o'clock.
I have two other items.
I want to speak.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
At one of the budget meetings in January, I attempted to talk about the fact that our taxpayers are still getting charged to pay for electricity so people can charge their electric vehicles for free in the town.
That's on a future agenda item.
Nancy, we just finished saying
Okay.
that EV
Well,
chargers are on the
Ed,
next.
here's the issue.
Okay.
And you have been a voting member on the Energy Committee for the past year, and Jeannie, you were the year before, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I brought up the night of the Ben High meeting. In the Ben High contract, it talks about our town entering some type of net metering project for the Ben High, and Jeannie
Could we talk about this during the night that it's warned on the agenda,
Well,
please?
net metering
No,
isn't,
because I think-
net metering is not to do with
Well,
the
I
charges.
think it should have been on the agenda 6 months ago, because clearly somebody needs it for the Ben High.
So Nancy, it's on the agenda. So does that solve the problem? It's
Well,
on the
it's
agenda.
after town meeting. I don't understand why we didn't talk about it 6 months ago.
Because we were, town staff have actually been, so town staff are going to come to the next meeting, and they're going to present us with information about what they suggest a
But
path
that
forward
only
is.
deals with the EV chargers that the town of Bennington owns.
I know,
I'm
it has
not
nothing
sure
to
what
do
the
with net metering
issue-
either. Right, I get that.
Because it's in the Ben High contract, so clearly
Ben
everyone...
High has nothing to do with this.
Well, it's more energy. And again, clearly our officials knew 6 months ago, so we should have had a discussion 6 months ago.
That is a private development.
It's a public-private project. Jeannie.
Yes, but the public part of it were ARPA funds.
It talks about...
And our part of the building we are leasing. We do not own
Jeannie,
it.
the contract talks about the town of Bennington entering some type of net metering agreement for the Ben High. So we should have had the discussion so we would understand and the public would understand what that means.
Okay, all right. I'll save mine to next. Sarah, do you have anything?
Other business. This is not other business. I don't know what this is.
I can't get
Okay, I'm
items
gonna
on the
go
agenda
ahead,
we should
Paul.
discuss.
Go
so.
ahead.
That might be something to email Zach about, I'm not sure.
I don't want to talk privately. I want the public to hear my questions and answers, because I've gotten enough runaround in the past talking to different people individually.
So I may I? May I?
I'm listening.
Yeah, I have nothing, and...
Okay, I have nothing.
Thank you.
Would you like to make a motion?
I would love to make a motion. I move that we adjourn this meeting and move into executive session for a contract issue.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you all.